Hi there, welcome to the Noah Presgrove case, looking at the latest news and discussions on the matter. Today we have quite an important video analysis looking at the recent interview of Kaden Pressy, key witness at the party and a friend to Noah Presgrove, in which Partners in True Crime did recently. I'm going to be going over the keynotes today, kind of like a summary analysis, adding on my thoughts, making some comparisons along the way, checking for consistencies or inconsistencies. It was just yesterday I did the summary analysis from Justin Roy's point of view. Although he wasn't a party goer, he had family members and family of family that actually were down at the party that relayed information to him over time. And Justin Roy also being close to Noah in the past because of Justin's son doing wrestling and football with Noah and Noah looking out for him. So there was a positive kind of like relationship, friendship then. And as for Kaden, it kind of goes the same way, but this time more important because Kaden was actually at the party. So with what comes with that comes more details and credit, shout out to the people last night in the live chat for supporting this channel, such as Cleo, Skeptical, Sunny, and whoever else as well, and Shicho, how you say the name, credit to them, shout out to them, and as well Skeptical for that last minute super thanks or super sticker for an extra sheet of paper. I definitely needed it, of course, for this video. A lot more notes written down. And we're just going to get through it bit by bit in the order of how the interview followed. Now, I do need to put a disclaimer across before we get into it. But before we even get to that, with what I was mentioning last night about the Justin Roy interview summary analysis, the odd person in the comments didn't think it was of value, that interview itself. Me personally, I think it was important. It collected it all together. I could see the consistencies. It tied in with what I already knew, which is a good thing, right? Because the worst situation to be in is when you think you know something and then someone speaks out, a key individual, and it's completely different and it turns everything upside down. Possibly by the title of this video, it kind of implies that things have been turned upside down. And that's why I'm going to issue a disclaimer when we get close. But if you do want to catch up on the video that I did last night, quite an important one, make sure to catch up. Top right corner of the screen where the I symbol is, if you click on that, you'll be able to find the video and the playlist as well. Welcome to those that are currently here in this live premiere. Feel free to share your thoughts, opinions, reactions in the live chat box right inside of the screen. At any point, if you wish to elaborate or you do have questions, thoughts, feelings, leave them all down below under the comment section and I can respond back to some when there is time and possibly answer questions as well. Feel free to settle on in, listen in or chat in the live chat. It doesn't matter. I'm going to lock on in just a second. I've got water next to me because I don't know if I'm going to get a dry throat or not from all the talking. Almost did yesterday. But the disclaimer is what I'm about to look into, read out and analyse. For some people, it made their head spin previously, wobble like a bobblehead and even maybe headaches. After watching that video of Kaden Pressy, that interview, interesting, little bit dodgy. In what way exactly? It'll make more sense. But there were some critical points mentioned which either I've never heard of before or a completely different time was given. There could be a bit of leniency in defense of Kaden, but considering how people have responded to Kaden in the past, and I don't mean it in a rude way, but kind of putting him up high on a mountain and praising him, whilst yes, praise is necessary to an extent, has it been overdone? Because are there inconsistencies within this recent interview? Did anyone else pick up on it? Any possible contradictions? Any points which could side more with what Stevie Howard was claiming, as shocking as that may be? Well, I've noted it down. I've even color-coded it as well for the key points that stand out. When I was reading it, I was thinking, what? I've never heard that before. I thought it was at a different time. The hell's going on? So that's what we're going to combine together today. And also, whilst I'm basing this off what I've heard elsewhere from other people and online, you can obviously argue and say, well, what Kaden Pressy says is more important than what I know from elsewhere, because Kaden was actually there himself. Well, yeah, I understand that, but I'm also basing it off from what I know of, from what Kaden has stated in the past when he's done Facebook post, and as well what I can remember and maybe what you can remember too. It still doesn't quite add up, okay? We're going to combine it all together today and try and make sense of the matter, because there might be some points here which I pick up on which you haven't, and maybe vice versa. Obviously, there's already been discussions and comments online, but I didn't want to read them or answer them just yet until I've watched the video, I've done my analysis, and then I've got a better idea. I didn't want it to confuse me. I needed to separate myself from all the reactions of people recently, so it's not impacting my, thoughts when I'm going into it. So I was able to do that successfully, and I've got the notes. It's now time to lock in, begin. And whilst I might be critical at points, it's not to be negative towards Kaden Pressy. I want to make that very clear. I am simply making valid observations, analysis, comparisons. That's it. I'm not being intentionally negative. I'm not doing a Stevie Howard, but I'm being realistic. So hopefully people clearly understand that, especially people who are new to my channel, who may not know me or my style of how I do things with my language and wording. This needs to be explained very clearly, right? So, without further ado, first thing what Kaden mentioned basically was, like an introduction. How do you know the people from the party? How do you know Noah Presgrove? How did that all come about? We saw it with Justin Roy, how in the past, son was with Noah, did sports, got together closer, became friends, blah, blah, blah. For Kaden, the situation there was, Kaden said he met the party goers in the past in Duncan, where most of them lived, or those lived nearby. Like you had car parks within Duncan, where groups of people would come and hang out, hang about, sit around, talk, have fun, and also drink. Did Kaden say he drunk himself? I don't think so. But, just that first point is very critical, and it kind of answers my previous questions. As for the actual year, I don't know what year that would be. Kaden said when he was still in high school as a freshman or something like that. I don't know how this American stuff works, right? So maybe a few years ago. If you think about the party goers, most of them were still underage when it came to drinking. They might have been 18, some 19, still classified as underage drinking. So anything that happened before that, definitely underage drinking. That doesn't change. And this first point, right, as simple as it is, a simple backstory, what Kaden is explaining, how he came across the partygoers, Jack Newton, Noah Presgrove, we'll get to that shortly. It just answered my questions about drinking when you're not supposed to, drinking when you're underage. The last video that I did, or the video before, I asked that question. When it's come to parties, okay, this particular party, September 2nd, September 4th, that weekend one, 4 days, underage drinking, not good, breaking social host rules. But what about the past? What about parties months before that, weeks before that, years before that? Did they drink then? What did it lead to? How young were they really when they started drinking and hanging out? And in a way, Kaden explained that. So even back then when they started meeting up, they were still and already drinking. Did anything bad happen back then? I guess not. Was it the inevitable with time that something would go wrong eventually if people are not drinking responsibly, and especially underage? Maybe. Now, the thing what one of the hosts said on the the other side of the channel, the Partners True Crime, I think she's called Cindy, said something like, well, we've all drunk, haven't we? We've all hung out and had lots of drinks and got drunk. Well, I didn't. Just being realistic. I would have taken a sip of some alcohol just to test. And that would have been like once or twice a year, such as when it comes to Christmas, things like that, 1 day or 2 days out of the whole year. But you're talking about drinking casually or drinking to an extent at some point in life. I haven't. Does that make me a goody boy? Who knows? Who cares? But, you know, when people like to use that line, well, we've all been there, we've all done it. We don't need to start dragging everybody into the same boat. We all have different experiences in life. Some of us have more control than others. Some of us may like something, others don't. It is what it is. Let's not drag everyone into the same boat. I don't really like it when that language is used, okay? So, Kaden gave a backstory behind meeting partygoers in the past, and it was positive. It was a bit of a community. Even in Duncan, right? You think of Terrell, oh, it's a small place, but it's actually Duncan where most of these people come from or hang about, such as in the past. Kaden said he met Jack and Noah basically at the same time, and that was in one of the parking lots in the past. But Kaden said he was closer as a friend to Jack than Noah Presgrove. And you think about it, Noah Presgrove, closer friend to Jack than Kaden. You get the order of things. And for Kaden to meet Jack along with Noah makes sense, and it would imply that Jack and Noah were already friends before coming across Kaden from the looks of it. So it's nice to provide a backstory there. That's all fine. Nothing negative mentioned there. Then a description was given and a question. How would you describe Noah? How would you describe Jack Newton? And Kaden responded, well, Noah, good kid, good guy, really funny. And as well, he was kind of like, if he wasn't from such and such a place in Oklahoma, he would be California kid or something because of him always being shirtless or mostly being shirtless and just wearing shorts and other times not wearing shoes. That is important itself. It answers a few more questions behind the behavior of Noah, the dress code of Noah, such as with the party to an extent, right? Whilst Noah was found on the side of a highway, okay, with some shoes, no shorts at a certain point, originally with shorts, but still underclothed, right? Take in mind the temperatures as well, but from like how Kaden worded it, that regardless of temperature, most of the time that Noah would be shirtless and just with some shorts on, and that was basically it. Even went as far to say 24/7. Okay, fair enough. So that could imply that when Noah was at the party, being shirtless wasn't out of the ordinary, it was a normal thing. The talk in the background though online about Caleb Newton cutting up Noah's shirt and handing it out to people, I don't know where that first came from, but my question was, how did he get a hold of his shirt? If he didn't take a shirt with him to the party, if he's normally shirtless, from what Kaden states. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? So, limited clothing when it came to Noah is what it is. Described as a good kid and also really funny, that's consistent with what Justin Roy has said when Justin individually has been around Noah Presgrove in the past. Good individual, athletic, bit of a jokester. So that jokester can also correlate to Kaden calling him really funny, because when you joke about, make jokes, some pranks maybe, other people can find it funny. So we're seeing consistency already. That is a positive. Consistency with what Justin says, with what Kaden says. Positive things mentioned about Noah. Makes it harder to believe how anyone could do anything bad to Noah in terms of the others out there that haven't spoken but have claimed to love him. So that's interesting up to now. Then the description about Jack when it came to Kaden describing him. Kaden said that Jack, good person, good guy, at the time. So that's the key words there. At the time implies once friends, no longer friends, but possibly hoping to become friends in the future again. And that was hinted at later on in the interview. I just wanted to throw it in now before I forget, okay? So good person at the time, fun to hang out with, also went hog hunting together with rifles, okay? So whilst, yeah, using rifles, which can be very dangerous in the wrong hands, but no trouble there, no issues back then, able to partake in activities, have a good time. Sounds positive, sounds reasonable. The only thing I did pick up on though, and it's kind of throughout the interview, and I'll just mention it just now. At times, things seemed a little bit dodgy. There were clear jump cuts and edits within that video interview. I don't know about that like podcast blank screen audio one, but I always like to look at the visuals of the people, their body language, their behavior. In comparison from Justin Roy to Kaden Pressy looked visibly uncomfortable at times. It makes sense. He was there to see it, to witness it, to see Noah's body. It's more real to him because he saw it firsthand. So it's hard talking about it. And later on in the interview, when talking more about the highway, the body, the situation there, the crying, you could tell it did upset him in a way in terms of his body language, moving about, fidgeting at times, twisting the neck like that. This is just simply body language. That's all I'm picking up on. It sounded like there was someone in the room with him in the background, maybe Alicia Lee, the mother, maybe. Not that that's an issue, but you just try and absorb it all in. What's present, what's around, what's the body language like of the person talking? Do they blink too quick? Do they fidget too much? Are they simply uncomfortable, or could they be hiding something? This is the same format and procedure what I did in the Dylan Rounds case with Candice Cooley, Justin Rounds. Justin Rounds with his arms folded, looked like he was holding something within, and that was expressed in terms of saying not many words, right? In terms of Kaden, he spoke pretty clear, well-spoken, respectful, clear, and yeah, answered questions which needed to be answered and was honest as well. From the looks of it, consistent up to a certain point, I would say, because there were some dodgy moments. But yeah, as for describing Jack, what I did pick up on, I don't know if anyone else did, but it seemed like Kaden only had a handful of words to describe Jack and even repeated a few words. Yeah, he's a good person. He's a good individual. It's like, trying to think of positive things to say about Jack, even though there might be some negative things or skepticism within here, which Kaden didn't want to express, but wanted to mention the positives, the good times, as in the past with Kaden, as said at the time, but nowadays, kind of uncertain. That it was mentioned clearly that Kaden hopes that Jack did not play any role at any point within the case of Noah's death or beyond that, and hopes that Jack is truly innocent. So you can see there is a level of skepticism. There is a form of hope too, but still a little bit wary. Oh, I really hope he's not done anything bad because we've been friends. I don't want it to be all for nothing, or the feeling of betrayal and, sadness and shock. None of that. So sometimes when you repeat yourself, it's to make a point bold and you highlight something. But other times, a person will repeat themselves, such as characteristics, descriptive words about a person, an individual, an event, because they don't really have many words to describe the moment or the person, and it's hard to describe. They might not have much positive to say, so they just hold on to the few positives and repeat them. Different ways of looking at it, that's all I'm saying, okay? Did Justin Roy describe Jack? Not really. Only when they were communicating online, such as on Facebook, and said it was okay at the time, but then later on things changed, but not so much with Jack, but just in general online with people, how they may have started threatening others or not responding back the same way, making stories up, switching and changing. So we can't really compare notes there as to how other people have described Jack, right? But based off Kaden's description, fair enough. This is just the introduction part, okay? Now, the next point where we start beginning in terms of the key parts of the party, right, kicking on in. Kaden jumped on in and said, let me just mention one thing. Kaden said, can we only talk about Saturday and Sunday? I don't want to be talking about Monday. Why is that? Is it because Monday he couldn't really say much because he was asleep? Or is it because it's too sensitive and it can't be revealed just yet? Why did Kaden say that? I can only talk about Saturday and Sunday. At that moment in the interview, I was thinking, but didn't you talk to an extent on Facebook publicly about Monday and what happened and what you were doing and where you were. Why all of a sudden now in this interview are you like, I can't be talking about it, I just want to talk about Saturday and Sunday? And when you watch later on into that video and interview, you think, okay. And this is the thing, I only want to talk about Saturday and Sunday. But by the way, 40 minutes in, we'll talk about Monday. What? It might not be a big deal to people, but to announce it, not to outspeak others, but just to announce, I can't talk about Monday, I just want to talk about Saturday and Sunday, and then later into the video decides to proceed onwards with talking about what happened Monday. I don't get that. Now, the video itself, the interview, was cut up, switched, cut up, jump cuts. Why was that? I don't know. When it came to Justin Roy's interview, at least to what I can remember, there wasn't any jump cuts. It was one single recording. Could be wrong. Maybe there was the odd jump cut or edit, but it wasn't that noticeable. But the one with Kaden, it was a bit messy at times. Some people not understanding some of it, having to repeat it several times. Some confusion along the way, maybe because there was a lot of detail to process. I rewound it quite a few times as well, but it might have just been because of the confusion when they were talking. And then the jump cuts, how it stuttered, went across, and I thought, why did it just suddenly jump? Why did it transition aside? I mean, was there talk in the background? Was there some stuff that needed to be edited out? Anything sensitive? Did Kaden cry at any point, so they had to cut that bit out so he didn't appear too upset? Because you could see he was trying to hold it together, especially at key times later on. But was there any points as to breaking down or becoming emotional, so they had to cut it out, stop the video or something? There was clearly video edits and jump cuts. Is that a bad thing? I'd say it's unknown, because it depends what was cut out and why. Maybe because there was a bit of umming and ahhing, confusion, and they didn't want that in the podcast interview, because normally when you have a podcast interview, you want it smooth and a flow to it. It is a lot of like that. It breaks the flow and the atmosphere. So I could understand the reason for editing there. It could be different on the other podcast, which was just like a blank screen without the faces showing, if the silence and the pauses have been cut out, but it's just something I picked up on, right? So to link back, Kaden talks about Saturday and Sunday's events first, and then later transitions into Monday's events, despite saying he didn't really want to talk about it, yet he still did. So what was that all about? Anyway, we begin, and this is where it gets important. So feel free to listen, focus on in. Kaden said he arrived to the party on Saturday, the same day in which Noah arrived as well. It's interesting how a couple of these people, key individuals, arrive on a Saturday, Sunday, still there, or whatever, Monday. Okay, 3 days. What about Friday? 4 days the party was. Who was at the party on Friday? From how it was worded, before Kaden got there, Jack was already at the party along with some of the party girls who live there. Carter Combs, Avery Combs, that makes sense. But who was at the party on Friday? How significant was that? Can anyone explain? Right? If Kaden has only come on down on a Saturday, what day was it when Avery Combs bought alcohol for people at the party? Was that buying alcohol for people at the party in terms of restocking oneself? Because people at the party have already drunk all the alcohol, you had to buy more. That makes sense. Or was it before people got there to the party? Because if it was before the party, was that on a Friday then? I don't know personally, just a little question. If that can be answered somewhere, that'd be appreciated. But yeah, Kaden arrived Saturday. Why? Because Jack invited him. Just like how Jack invited Noah Presgrove the following day, supposedly, back to the party. And we'll need to talk about that particular event later because it doesn't quite add up with what Kaden says. Take that into mind. Upon getting there, there were drinking already or begun drinking, so is what it is. As for the actual time, as when Kaden arrived on a Saturday, I'm not quite sure if that was mentioned. I can't remember personally, but, you know, Kaden arrived on the Saturday. Jack was one of the reasons for inviting him. You know, they're friends already, which they were. You can understand, hey, having a party, come on down, don't miss out. Fine. The next bit mentioned by Kaden was the party goers at the house. There was around 30 to 40 people. I can't remember who mentioned that figure. Was it Sarah Long? It was either Sarah Long or Stevie Howard. I think it might have been Sarah Long who mentioned it just recently on Facebook, the Sofa Sleuth Facebook group with Brooke Carter, Brooke Carter being maybe one of the admins on that page, and Sarah Long or Stevie Howard or both being on there. We saw that recently. I did a video about it. They mentioned about 40 people at the party. The only reason why that's important is those dodgy people out there that have told multiple different stories, people you can't really trust or believe in, seem to be consistent with the exact number of people that were at the party, similar to what Kaden stated himself, and Kaden was actually there. So this is the thing. Stevie Howard, Sarah Long, Caleb Newton, etc., may be seen by some as dodgy at times, hard to follow, believe in. But despite there being possibly a range of BS, and I don't mean Brylan sweat, I mean bullshit, BS, in between the lines, there might be a little bit of truth within. That's why you have to listen to it all. You don't need to internalize it, but listen and see what's said. Then compare, contrast. And there is a consistency with a certain set number of partygoers at the party, 30 to 40 people. Not exactly a big house building, right? So it would have been pretty full. Is there a possibility that there was an overflow outside of the property or any of the buildings nearby? I wonder. Justin Roy believed that there were adults, maybe 25 or older, that were either at the party or nearby at some of the other houses coming and going. And, you know, if you got that many people there and only so many people can fit in the building without it being too cramped, people could have moved about, switched and changed, you never know. But you got 30 to 40 partygoers who are possibly all drunk, or most of them are. That sounds kind of risky because, you know, more drunk people about, more chaos, could be more reckless. And obviously, the more people present, the higher the chances that something could go wrong or a fight could break out. Whereas if you just had a very small handful group of people who you all know, it wouldn't be as problematic. Now, we've been told in the past that the reason why there was that many people there was because initially only a certain amount of people were actually invited by the party girl, and then those friends that were invited brought their own friends along, such as Texas boys, etc. Was Stevie Howard in approval of that? Well, at the time she claimed, no, I didn't want all those other people to come along. I didn't allow that, but they came over regardless. It does happen at times, right? It can get a bit out of hand. So quite a few people at the party, higher chances that something could go wrong. But this is what's interesting. On the Saturday when Kaden was there, he said everything went normal. What? What? That's the first sign of dodginess. And then we move on to Sunday, which is even more dodgy. Okay, you're going to hear that word maybe quite a bit. So, what we've heard of previously, and maybe it was described by Jack initially, but it was also mentioned by other people. It was also mentioned by Justin Roy and other people on Facebook, etc., etc. There was a consistency, there was a consensus that on the Saturday, at some point, there was some kind of argument, verbal argument, disagreements, to what extent unknown, compared to the one what we've heard about on the Monday, which Justin Roy said it was very aggressive between Noah and Jack, pushing and shoving, getting physical. But on the Saturday, the very first argument and falling out between Noah and Jack, supposedly over girls, a girlfriend, girl trouble, who knows, it can happen. We're drinking as well, problematic. At what point did that argument break out? Later on into the night of Saturday, going into early hours of Sunday morning, because what we've heard of, And it was also mentioned by Dusty as well on Facebook and Justin Roy that after that argument, Noah left the party Saturday night, made it back to his house, which was early Sunday morning, had a shower, and then at 5 p.m. into the afternoon, going into the evening, was invited back to the party by Jack. So it's kind of like making up. Hey Noah, we had a falling out the day before. Come back to the party. Let's have a good time. And Noah does that. But this time, Noah is driven down to the party. That's the story, what we've heard over and over again. It's been mostly consistent. And then all of a sudden, Kaden Pressy, doing this interview, says, yeah, I arrived on Saturday. Jack invited me. Noah was obviously there. We were drinking. It was okay. 30 to 40 people present. Everything was normal. And not a single mention or word about the falling out argument between Noah and Jack Newton, which ultimately led to Noah leaving the party, getting back home early Sunday morning and having a shower. That wasn't mentioned by Kaden. To have a falling out on a Saturday, for it to be bad enough for Noah to leave and want to leave, is somewhat significant, especially considering it supposedly happened again on the Monday. So they're never really patched up, or at least one of them didn't truly patch up, and there was a false sense of security along the way from the looks of it. Why didn't Kaden Pressy mention about Noah Presgrove and Jack falling out and then Noah leaving the party? Why didn't Kaden mention that? Is it because Kaden wasn't there to see it himself? So all he's talking about is from what he saw himself, and if he wasn't around during that argument, he can't talk about it. That's all I could think of. But to say the party was normal, I don't think so. I think falling out is an important point within the timeline. It's like the beginning of disagreements, the beginning of Jack maybe hating Noah or becoming jealous of Noah. What's the other term used? In the shadow of Noah, insecurities showing, right? Because if Noah is the popular one there, girls like him, people orbit around him, and then there's Jack, and Jack then may think Carter Combs, or Noah is flirting with Carter Combs. Is this the beginning, the foreshadowing events of what could lead to next? Monday morning, another disagreement, falling out, the final straw, a very aggressive argument, leads to a physical altercation and beyond? Maybe. And if you can track back to when it first started, Saturday would have been the time. Yet Kaden mentioned nothing about it and said the party was all normal and fine. Far from it, in my opinion, and from what I've seen elsewhere. So let me know your thoughts down below. Are you surprised by that? Are you surprised that Kaden described the party and events as normal on a Saturday, despite what we've heard and what's been said over and over again? Let me know what you think down below. And the reason why it gets confusing is because when it comes to the following day, Sunday, morning time, pretty early on from how it was described by Kaden, Kaden said that him, Kaden, Noah Presgrove, Jack Newton, a girl called Logan, Avery and Carter Combs, Brylan Sweat, Isaac Rojas, ate at Waurika Gas Station. Where is Waurika Gas Station? Well, kind of near to Waurika Lake, in that direction, north. Okay. Well, in that direction north, it's closer to where Noah lives. But how the story has been mentioned in the past was when Noah left the party Saturday night, arrived at his home early hours of Sunday morning, he had a shower. And that was it until 5 p.m. into the afternoon, evening, when he was invited back by Jack and returned back to the party. So you see the time difference, the distance physically, emotionally between Noah Presgrove and Jack Newton. Saturday night at the party together, a falling out, Noah leaves, distances himself from his best friend Jack, gets back home, has a shower. Hours later, Jack calls up, hey, come back to the party. Come on down. Someone can pick you up and take you down there. But that's later into the evening. That's going past the afternoon into the evening time. For Kaden to say Sunday morning that him, Noah Presgrove, Jack, Logan, Avery, Carter, Brylan, Isaac, etc. were all together eating at a gas station in Waurika or at Waurika or near to. I just don't follow. I don't understand. This is a major timeline which has never been mentioned before, or at least from what I've never heard this before. Have you? Because from the original story and how it's been mentioned ever since until just recently, that Noah made it back home Sunday morning and then nothing. Not hanging out with anyone, not going back to the party, only once it got to 5 p.m. and then a call was made and then people picked him up and then drove directly down to the party. And yet Kaden is saying in the morning of Sunday, the morning in which Noah returned back to his house to have a shower and then sleep, Kaden's saying, no, Noah was with us and with Jack, even though Noah had a falling out with Jack and vice versa. Yet Kaden's saying the party was perfectly fine Saturday. Supposedly, how you could interpret it from Kaden, we've not mentioned in it, is no arguments, nothing to see here. Kaden didn't even mention anything about whether Noah left the party on Saturday night and made it back home. There was no mention of that either. The hell's going on? Why are these pre-existing supposed events being left out by Kaden? Is it because they never happened? Or because Kaden didn't see it himself? But if he's claiming to have been with Noah, Sunday morning, with Jack as well, at Rojas gas station, despite it being worded previously that Noah distanced himself and was at his home, had a shower, went to sleep, and then later was called, asked to come back to the party. What? It just does not add up, does it? I mean, is there any other possibilities that Noah did leave Sunday morning, made it back to his house, had a shower, had a very short sleep, still morning time, enough time to be picked up by someone, whoever was driving at the time, tagging along with Kaden, Noah, Jack, Logan, Avery, Carter, Brylan, Isaac, and then going to eat breakfast or something at Waurika gas station. But how long for? How long for? And then where to then? Because it doesn't tie in with this 5 p.m. call, which Jack asked. They weren't together at the time. 5 p.m. Jack supposedly at the party. Noah still at his home. Asked to come on down to the party. And yet earlier in the morning they were together, all together. No, it's not making any sense. Does anyone else agree? I might be stuck on this point for a bit, but still it stands out to me because it's like 1 minute you're at the party, then you're not. Give a few hours, then you're back. And you didn't do anything in between. Yet Kaden's saying that Noah did, and that Noah was hanging out with us. That Noah was hanging out with Jack, despite that argument the night before. Never heard that mentioned ever before, only now with what Kaden said. Yeah, interesting. Sunday morning, weird. Then, moving on with the Sunday events, Kaden said, Kaden went back to the party house along with the girls and they remained there. Though Jack Newton, Noah Presgrove, Isaac Rojas, Brylan Sweat went back to town. When it's worded as went back, that would imply went back to where they were earlier at Waurika gas station or the town nearby, whatever you want to call it, right? So they went back. Why did they go back? And why were some of the people dropped off at the party house? Is it because some wanted to return back to the party and others didn't? Those that didn't, such as Jack, Noah, Isaac, Brylan, who went back to town, why? What were they doing? Kaden said, I don't know what they got up to. So With these additional events going on elsewhere externally, you're getting a bit more depth behind the case and the story itself. How it was portrayed originally was you had a 4-day party at the party house almost every single day, party non-stop 24/7. Then you had an additional information of some people came, some people left, came back the following day to rest, to recover, to enable to build enough energy so then they could party again. I understand that. But now we're saying how, well, early in the morning, instead of partying, actually went to town, actually did some other things in between. It wasn't just party, party, party. It was do some partying, then rest, recover, then go elsewhere and have fun. So the party house, although that's been the main focal zero ground point, whatever you want to call it, ground zero within this whole case, what's the house look like? The property, cameras, focus in on that. What's around? What's on the land? What went down? What was the last thing to happen? Instead of just focusing all in on that, we need to start looking elsewhere and expanding. Why did they go to town? Why did they come back? Why did they go back out there? What happened out there? What type of conversations and discussions followed? At any point when they were out in town, did Noah and Jack have any more arguments? Was there any more complications? Was there any other shady things going on further afar? Kaden did mention that those guys that did go back to town, all guys, was it like a lads or a guys day out or something? The reference to Caleb Newton at least. So, Jack Newton's father, Caleb Newton. Oh, Caleb Newton's getting involved now. Is that so? Back then? Was there at any point where they said, hey father, Caleb, you want to come back to the party with us? We can all get together. You never know, because whilst Caleb has been brought into this case, been talked about where he was, what he was doing, to my knowledge at the time, excluding rumours and stuff, that Caleb Newton doing whatever at any point, and then when it came to Monday, the fishing trip, oh, that's what it's all about. Jack's at the party, Caleb's at his place of living, supposedly. Come on down to my house, meet there, then we can go fishing. Plans change after. Oh, Jack, I've overslept. Sorry, Caleb, meet you down at the ramp. Okay. Fast forward to 6:05 in the morning, down the highway. Hey, father, can't make it, can't do the fishing trip. Just found Noah's body, he's dead. Then Caleb, at some point, rushes on down and arrives. And that's where he gets involved. That's what I knew of at the time. But now, how it's been, coming out with what Kaden has said, that Caleb was with some of the guys from the party, but they were in town. But doing what? And why? And why has it only been mentioned now? I don't remember Jack ever mentioning any of this. And it's the thing. If Jack was the one to minimise and downplay the argument which he had with Noah originally, whether that be the first one or the one on Monday, right? Suppose it being, a making up, apologising, hugging, whatever. Why didn't Jack never mention about Sunday morning then, hanging out with Noah and the others at that gas station eating? How come Jack never mentioned about on Sunday at some point going back out to town with his father Caleb and some of the party goers with Noah? Why wasn't that mentioned? Why is it only mentioned now by Kaden individually, specifically? Stands out to me. Take in mind, this will take time to process because, at least to me, this is new information which I've never heard of before, right? So with the pre-existing thoughts of what I supposedly knew of, things are being turned upside down now. It's not good. This is where the inconsistencies or the lack of consistency across all boards and other people as well in retelling the stories of what happened at what point, what day, right? So Sunday, pretty eventful in different areas, not just at the party. So yeah. So whilst Kaden is back at the house with the party girls and Jack, Noah, Isaac, Brylan at the in town, later on it's mentioned that 8 to 9 o'clock, so 8-9 in the morning AM, the party started back up. So that's interesting. The party was on and off, not consistently 24/7. Because a range of people were questioning, how could anyone party for 4 days, especially if they don't use drugs? How can you do it non-stop? Well, from how it's worded here by Kaden, the party wasn't 24/7. So it does make it more understandable now as to why people would have had a bit more time to recover, energise themselves, get some food in, get some water in, go elsewhere, change the scenery, breath of fresh air, sleep in between possibly, like with some. Even though that's not really been mentioned just yet, but at least with the previous stories like Noah's situation, he did have time to sleep it off and even have a shower. The others, I'm not too sure, it wasn't exactly mentioned. But that's interesting. 8 to 9 o'clock in the morning, the party started back up, meaning that everything that was just mentioned before on Sunday happened much earlier in the morning, which makes it harder to believe how Noah was able to make it back Sunday morning, back at his house, to have a shower, to sleep as well, and then wake up again still early in the morning, enough time to be able to then hang out with the guys, and then head back out to town afterwards, and still before 8 to 9 in the morning, supposedly. Now, granted, like how there can be an overlap between the following night going into the early hours of Sunday morning, because no particular specific time was given, that might be why I don't truly understand the situation, and it could be more explainable if the actual timestamp was given. So this is not guaranteed, but let's just say that Noah Presgrove left Saturday night, mainly because of that argument, maybe, with Jack wanting to distance himself, simply wanted to get some sleep as well, re-energise himself for the following day. Heading back, late at night, getting into the early hours of the morning, 0000, finally getting to his place of living. Was that 1 or 2 in the morning, or was that even earlier at 0000? Having a shower, and then maybe 2, 3, 4 hours of sleep, and then waking up, and then still having enough time to go out with the guys, eat, go back to town after, and still before 8 and 9 in the morning, possibly. It might be possible. Yeah, maybe. But it still doesn't explain how 5 p.m. Jack calling Noah supposedly for the first time since that falling out, such as, hey, can you come on down to the party? Yeah, that's just weird in my opinion. So, yeah, 8, 9 in the morning, Sunday, party started back up, people collected together and came on down. Then, what was mentioned then, one friend, what's that? It's the way I've written it, it's a bit dodgy this, I'm not good at it. One friend back, Kaden went on a side-by-side. Oh yeah, so once the likes of Jack, Noah, Isaac, Brylan, who were out in town, returned back to the party, them lot, including Kaden, went on a side-by-side hunting and shooting possums, hogs, etc. Legally, illegally, I don't know. If you're just shooting for the fun of it, I don't know. I don't agree with that. I think you should only kill animals for survival, pure survival, or maybe possibly to defend yourself, and maybe some exceptions where there might be a danger to you or a danger to other wildlife or where you live somehow. I can't quite elaborate, but you'll get where I'm coming from there. That's just my opinion. When it comes to outright trophy hunting or killing things just for the fun of it, oh, it's fine, it's allowed. Well, on that basis and attitude, then humans should be able to go out and kill any human that they want just for the fun of it. You can have it one way, have it both ways. Simple as. Okay? People will get bitchy about that, but tough shit. That's my perspective. Okay? So yeah, the hunting and shooting in a side-by-side. Is that the side-by-side which Noah was involved with at some point at the party onwards, where it tipped over? I don't know, I couldn't quite hear what Kaden was saying in that interview at the time. There might be a possibility, but not guaranteed. If anyone else heard it clearly, you can reinforce or elaborate down below in the comment section. But You know, a lot going on. Besides the whole focus again, it's just party, party, party at the house, trashy stuff, punching things, running into things, getting slapped, drinking, drawing on. There's a lot more to this party than what we've seen from that video footage. They're out in town, then the back, then the hunting, then the shooting. And then, as Kaden said, when they were driving back or something, they went over some hole in the ground, but were able to like jump over it or something in the vehicle, and it was kind of cool. It's a bit of recklessness, kind of wild, but pretty high energy, bit of adrenaline rush as well. Okay, so there was a bit more to it than a simple trashy party, right? There was activity going on all over the place. And if it goes on all over the place, do you need to look in those other areas in particular? If at any point people were partying near a pond, do you have to look over there in case at that time something was disposed of or clues were left behind? Or to go back to after the party when something may have been disposed of then? All this partying here and there. What about the barn? Any partying inside of there? Any other dodgy activity at any point? I wonder. No reference was given though by Kaden, so that's something at least, but if we want there to see it, then he couldn't recall it, right? Maybe someone else did. But yeah, we've got that. They did return back, despite all that hunting and shooting, Kaden and the other guys, which I'm assuming Noah and Jack and Isaac and Brylan and whoever else were all there. Only so many people would be able to fit in a side-by-side, right? I don't know how many seats there are though. They returned back to the party at the time of when it was getting dark, and that was on Sunday, right? A lot going on Sunday, right? More than on Saturday, in my opinion. Kaden said that Sunday night at 10:30 p.m, also known as in military time 22:30, Kaden stopped drinking when his cousin showed up. He didn't want to be drunk at the time because he wanted to look out for the cousin, for her. He didn't want any of the other party guys who may have been drunk flirting or getting inappropriate. So, you know, family looking out for one another, very normal. It's good of Kaden. Even like later on when we hear about Kaden as to why he walked away from the highway, because of a level of respect, a level of responsibility, Kaden appears to be a good individual. But this is where the problem comes on in. And it is a problem. Well, I would argue and say it's a problem. But it does come down to the timing, and the timing was never given. And you might be wondering, what? 10:30 p.m? Well, that's what Kaden said. But I'm speaking on behalf of Noah Presgrove, right? Kaden Pressy admitted himself that Monday, I don't know what day it was, preferably getting into Monday, early hours of the morning, that Noah approached Kaden and said, could you give me a lift back home? And Kaden said, and it's even on Facebook, and I have documented it myself on my channel, Kaden said he couldn't drive Noah back after drinking. Drunk, recovering, side effects, didn't want to get in trouble with the police, etc. At the time, that sounded quite responsible of Kaden, sensible. Didn't want to risk himself, didn't want to get in trouble, didn't want to risk Noah's life either. So obviously, Noah did reach out to others, and the same people turned him down, but maybe for other reasons. Nevertheless, you did have Sarah Long, who wasn't even there, talking to Jasmine Millan online months later, saying to Jasmine Millan, I think it was, saying at least there was at least one designated driver on site at the party. Well, how come that one designated driver who wasn't drunk wasn't able to give Noah a lift back then? That's one question there. But how does this all link together, and why is it so relevant to Kaden and the cousin visiting around? Well, Kaden said at 10:30 p.m. that he stopped drinking when the cousin visited. More importantly, Kaden said he sobered up real quick at 22:30, Sunday night. Nowhere near Monday morning, right? Still a big difference. By 22:30, You've already sobered up. And then what happened after that? Kaden didn't elaborate on that. Kaden didn't give the time as to when Noah approached him. I'm mentioning this very clearly and slowly because there could be context lacking which makes Kaden appear dodgy when he's not, and it's not intentional. But when there is information lacking, and I've heard of pre-existing things mentioned in the past by Kaden, it doesn't add up, right? And I'll say it now before we go any further because I don't want to forget anything. If at 22:30 into the night on Sunday, you've sobered up, and then hours on, even more time to sober up, even though you already have done, maybe to sleep in between as well, and at some point then, and I'm assuming past 22:30 onwards, going into early hours of Monday, that's when Noah approached Kaden and said, "Can you give me a lift back?" And Kaden said, "No, I can't. I've been drinking. I don't want to get in trouble with the police." You've been drinking, and yet Kaden recently just said, "I sobered up real quick." Well, then it shouldn't have been a problem. If you sobered up and you're okay and you're there with it, would there have been a problem? Or is it still because of the breathalyzer and all of that? And how sobered up was Kaden? Did he think he sobered up enough? Was he truly sobered up or not exactly? But nevertheless, it just sounds like Kaden is backtracking. As said, there is missing context. I don't know the time as to when exactly Noah approached Kaden. Was it before 22:30 Sunday night when Kaden was still drunk? But even still, Noah Presgrove supposedly left in the morning of Monday, 3:30. So there was enough time from 22:30 or before that when asked onwards for Noah to ask once again. If Kaden was sober, he should have been able to give Noah a lift back. Unless, despite sobering up, Kaden after 22:30 onwards, later on going into early hours of Monday morning, decided to drink once again and get drunk once again. That missing context would make this appear less suspicious and dodgy. That's all I'm saying. So I might be doing some of the work on behalf of another person to try and make sense of it from Kaden's point of view, because there are some details missing out and maybe a few contradictions as well, even from the likes of Kaden, right? I'm just saying it for how it is and what's been said compared to what's been said in the past. In the past, Kaden said, some point, roughly Monday morning as it's interpreted, early, that Noah asked him, could I have a lift back? And Kaden said, I can't, I've been drinking, right? And yet here, in this just recent interview, Kaden's saying that, yeah, by Sunday night, I was already sobered up real quick, more so because of my cousin visiting. Okay. So if you sobered up then, but previously you said you couldn't because you've drunk when Noah approached you, what the hell's going on there? It doesn't add up. I think there is missing context, right? I'm not going after Kaden, nor am I trying to stick up for him in a do-gooder way. I'm just being realistic because it's a bit fragmented, this. It's messy. And this is one of the critical points that stood out to me. Does it stand out to you, yes or no? Let's move on. Then Kaden started talking about recordings of some of the party footage, and we saw that ourselves, right? Kaden even mentioned it himself, where from the point of view, he was in that chair, or one of the chairs where he slept in or slept near to the sofa, where you saw the people in the kitchen area, and as the camera panned down, saw the little pink knee brace, which was him himself. And that was mentioned by people on my channel. I didn't know at the time, but it was mentioned, and then it was confirmed, and then I saw it myself. So yeah, fair enough. That party footage, what we saw though, besides that of the kitchen area, Kaden said he recorded that because it showed his cousin in the kitchen supposedly, and that was just done, or maybe not the kitchen bit, but at some point he zoomed in on a girl, and he did that to share with his family to say that she's okay. So she's come on down by herself at the party. Kaden wanted to be sober to protect and look over her. If I be honest with you, For Kaden to be cautious to begin with, as soon as hearing that the cousin is coming on down and Kaden feels he's got the responsibility to look out for her because of other males that can't control themselves, is it even the right environment to be in the first place? If you have your doubts, your suspicions. Oh, we know what guys can be like when they're drunk. They can force themselves onto females. Not all. Some people can actually control themselves. But if you surround yourself with people who can't control themselves, no wonder why you're cautious. Do you need to rethink who you hang around with? Maybe not yourself, because you may not be the target, but people who you may know of, are they suitable in terms of being around the friends you're around? Maybe not. It's kind of like you could be in a gang with someone, a violent gang, a criminal gang. You're respected by them. No trouble, no safety issues, whatever. You could have another friend or a family member that decides to tag along sometime, and you're like, well, I'm around a violent, dangerous gang in which they trust and respect me, but they don't know you, and they may not like you. But you can still come along. I'm going to allow you to come along. I'm not going to contest. I'll just look out and be cautious. Just doesn't sound, it sounds dodgy. You should be comfortable around people you're around because there should be, hopefully, good individuals. But hopefully, that at some point in some time, whether it be friends or family members, others out there who you know, you can tag along, bring along and say, hey, look, meet all these people, good individuals. But to say, well, when there's alcohol around and underage drinking and the cousin's coming along, I had to sober up to look out for her because anything could happen. Are we saying sexual assault, rape? So are we saying that if Kaden wasn't sober, the cousin could have been touched inappropriately, something bad could have happened? But it didn't because Kaden was sober. But what about other people there? Could have happened to anyone else? To even think that something could have happened in the first place implies that the party was a bit dark to begin with. That's how I'm interpreting it. Doesn't sound too good. No. This sounds dodgy as well. Anyway, besides that, Kaden recording some footage from the party and his perspective, what we've seen already. Other parts of the party footage, I'm guessing, was recorded by other people because it was on different days and it was stitched together on the Daily Mail as like a compilation, right? And not even in the correct order. Bit useless, right? But it gave the perspective of Noah Presgrove with different people recording the footage, I'm guessing. But for most part of it, Kaden didn't show up in the camera or the background of the footage playing, at least to what I can remember. Granted, Kaden wasn't able to do much because of his leg. But it gets interesting now when I think about it. Sunday morning, let's all hang out, let's go and eat some food. And then, we'll go back to the party. And then later on, before it gets dark, let's go out hog hunting. Let's start shooting all over the place and even bridge a big gap in the road or something. Yeah, full on. I thought Kaden wasn't mobile. He couldn't do much. He was at the party. He was sat down for most part of it. He couldn't really partake in much activities. And now we're saying that Kaden was here, there, everywhere, doing this and that. What? Now, granted, you can do other activities, providing you're sat down and you're not moving too much. I do get that. So if you are shooting things, you could be still in the vehicle shooting out the window. I don't know exactly how it works out there, but I'm sure some people shoot whilst they're driving, provided it's not on a main road. And if you're driving somewhere to get food, you don't really have to move much. Kaden can still walk about, but he can't do too much because of having that surgery. But in terms of how it's been described in the past, at least, Kaden at the party, Kaden couldn't really participate in much activities. He mainly sat down and hung out with people. He's had surgery. He's kind of vulnerable, not as mobile. And now Kaden, from his own point of view, oh yeah, this happened, that happened, I did this, I did that. Once again, it just doesn't quite add up. Not exactly consistent, in my opinion. So there is that. And as for the other party footage, we don't know who recorded that stuff of like Noah getting slapped, or even when getting slapped by Brylan or Shandy. I don't know about that. Now, moving on. And this appears to be where we get to Monday morning. And there are a lot of notes. Kaden said earlier on, right, I just want to make this very clear in this interview. I only want to be talking about Saturday and Sunday. That's all I want to talk about. But by the way, let's talk about Monday right now. Let's get really into it, and I'll mention everything that I know of. What the hell's going on? Why the sudden change up? Unless it's because Kaden didn't feel comfortable enough with talking about Monday's events, because that's the real raw stuff where it's hard hitting. The death, the beginning of Noah's death, retelling the stories and events of seeing it firsthand, Noah's body. Because I'll be honest with you, this is where it kicked in, where Kaden was holding it in or holding it back from getting emotional, and where more of the jump cuts came in. So maybe that's why he didn't want to talk about Monday's events at the start of the interview. But once he warmed up and got more comfortable with talking about it and who he was around, he decided to open up about Monday. But there was definitely a change up and expanded as well with talking. So that's interesting as an observation only. So Kaden said, oh, here we go. Listen in. Kaden said around 2 in the morning, 2 a.m, Monday, September 4th, 2023, went to sleep. What? If you remember clearly, and it was mentioned previously by Kaden himself, he went to sleep at 3 in the morning. It was worded like he went to sleep for the first time Monday morning, 3 a.m. And now Kaden's saying 2 a.m. That's a 1 hour time difference. How do you get that mixed up? There might be some leniency, of course, which we'll acknowledge later. But this 1 hour difference is drastic. The earlier he sleeps, the less he will see, right? And Monday morning is the most critical event, because that's when Noah is still around, still awake, still alive, and supposedly Jack is. And then beyond that point, that's when things go radio silent, 3 in the morning, and Noah leaves at some point, ATV, shower, and all that type of stuff going on. What I'm getting at here, to say that you went to sleep at 2 a.m, yet in an official statement, Kaden said he went to sleep at 3 in the morning, an hour later in the past, that's getting onto the, getting to the equivalent of other partygoers, and even likes of Stevie Howard, Sarah Long, saying one story, then changing it up afterwards. Considering people praised Kaden for being Mr. Consistent, Mr. Trustworthy, now we're getting a 1 hour time difference. Previously, oh yeah, arguments with Jack, Noah, then Noah left, went back home, and then only came back to the party at 5 p.m. onwards the following day. And in between, Kaden saying, well, nothing happened. It was all normal, fine. We even all hung out Sunday morning. But I thought Noah was still at home. I thought he didn't make it back to the party. I thought the next time when Noah met up with Jack was via that call, and that was to do with getting down to the party and making things up after that argument. What Kaden's saying is turning everything upside down. That's what I don't get. And the theme of a 1 hour difference from when Kaden originally claimed to have gone to sleep 3 in the morning on Monday to now 2 a.m. in the morning Monday, that's a big difference. This is similar to Stevie Howard, which could be seen as gaslighting, but Stevie Howard recently, what we saw on Sofa Sleeves, where she said, when it comes to those phone pings of Kaden Pressy, 6 in the morning onwards, it wasn't earlier on. Now, in defense, I said maybe because Kaden didn't have his phone with him earlier on, hence why it didn't ping in that area. But nevertheless, the point what Stevie Howard was trying to put across was certain timestamps may not be entirely true. And instead of it being 5:15 when Jack made it back to alert people, it could have been 6:15. So like an hour difference, just like how there's an hour difference here. I'm not supporting Stevie Howard, I'm not saying she's right, but in terms of the theme of maybe that person got it wrong, maybe it wasn't 5:15, but it was 6:15. Just like how, Kaden himself said 3 in the morning when he went to sleep, but now, it was actually 2 in the morning. That's a 1 hour time difference. That's a big jump, isn't it? Do people see that? And, mistakes can be made along the way, but they weren't cleared up in between, at least from what I saw, what I last looked at. 3 a.m. was mentioned in some of the posts by Kaden Pressy, unless it's been changed and edited out since. But at least at the time of when I looked at it, I could have sworn it said 3 in the morning. You even heard me reference it previously in the past and even add it to the maps as well. I don't just add random timestamps for the fun of it. I add them from hearing about it within the case, and if there is a level of consistency, I will reinforce it, okay? Now, not that it was mentioned in the interview here, but some people on Facebook, when talking about a service truck or people showing up before Kaden or afterwards at 5:30, and I'm thinking, 5:30? That was the original timestamp that I used on my map analysis. And only ever since I decided to edit that, because when I look back at it and I thought, why did I say 5:30? Where did I get that from? It was 5:53, not 5:30. Yes, you did have 5:46, but when looking back at 5:30 and I thought, why did I put that on the map? What's that in relation to? And then just recently, because of this Kaden interview, even though it wasn't mentioned in the interview, people online on Facebook discussing the 5:30 timestamp, I'm thinking, oh, maybe there is significance behind it, but I've got rid of it regardless because, I've just added in the ones which are a bit more concrete or a bit more consistent, right? That's why I've not jumped in with the timestamps, the timelines. Other people can do the deep dives, the deep fries, the chicken, whatever, but I don't want to go too all in if it's not 100% confirmed. We need consistency. And up to now, we're not getting consistency from Kaden. The exception could be because there is lacking context which he failed to include in the interview. And if that context was added in, then it could make more sense behind some of this stuff. But speaking of it raw, part 1 interview, it's not looking too good with Kaden. There isn't that consistency as people were claiming beforehand. And that's not me being negative, this is me being honest, realistic. Hopefully other people see it. Is that why some people said to me before, headaches, confused, head spinning all over the place, whatever? I think I understand now. Not that I'm experiencing that myself, but I'm thinking, oh no, here comes the inconsistencies, but whatever. Kaden said 2 in the morning he went to sleep, and that was Monday. Previously he stated 3 in the morning. Big difference. He said that Jack, Mikey, Noah, Brylan, Isaac, Carter Combs, Avery Combs, Logan were awake. That kind of sounds like recalling how he was mentioning some of the names back in his Facebook statement where he said 3 in the morning in the kitchen, Noah was awake, Jack was awake, and everybody else. That's consistent with what Kaden says here, but the major difference is a 1 hour time difference, in which he stated it back then to what he's saying now. 2 in the morning, not 3 in the morning. Jack originally said, I went to sleep 1 in the morning. Then that changed to, I went to sleep 2 in the morning. But you've got Kaden saying, I went to sleep 3 in the morning and I saw Jack and Noah awake. But now Kaden's saying, I went to sleep 2 in the morning. What the fuck is going on? Weird. So, who the hell's Mikey? Mikey! Well, no, that's Nicky from something else. But who's Mikey? Never heard his name before. And what about his last name? That wasn't mentioned. I'm assuming that Mikey is that light-skinned African-American. Is that the correct wording so people don't get triggered? The one that was described as Mike Tyson. Mikey, Mike Tyson. Is that the same person we're talking about, which was in that party footage? I'm assuming. Confirm it down below if you want. So they're all awake. Okay. But Kaden is going to sleep 2 in the morning, not 3 in the morning, which he previously stated. Yeah, doesn't sound too good. Let's move on to the next few notes. And it's a little bit messy this because the sheet's going to blow all over the place. So, let it sink in your mind. What do you think up to now? Consistent or not? Far from it? Do you agree with me or not? You can List everything down below. So, whilst going to sleep 2 in the morning, supposedly, Kaden says 43 minutes later on Monday that Kaden was woken up because his mom, also known as Alicia Lee, called him. Why? Because it was regarding the cousin. They were worried about her because she was supposedly on the move. So it's interesting. Not that Kaden can do everything, okay? You shouldn't have to have the responsibility to do everything. He's not Superman. But for Kaden to say at 22:30 Sunday night, I'm not gonna drink anymore. I'm sobered up. I need to look out for the cousin. And then for 2 in the morning Monday to just be asleep like that because of, natural reasons, and for the cousin to be wandering off elsewhere out of the property with a friend or someone, for the family to pick up on that. How? Tracking the cousin's phone to see if she's on the move at an odd time in the morning, worried because of that. Why the hell did the cousin even come down in the first place if you got parents worried and then you got Kaden a bit concerned what the guys could do at the party? Is it even a safe place or an appropriate place to be, or just to invite certain people you know of to come on down? I mean, from the looks of it, the cousin came on down because they wanted to. Their personal choice. Kaden doesn't have the final say or the control over everything. I get that, but it just doesn't seem like the right environment from the looks of it. The way people are worried, the way people are cautious. When you have a party, you shouldn't have to be cautious. You shouldn't have to worry or overthink. You should be able to just go with the flow and have fun. With the exception that if you were out partying in town, away from a place you live at or familiar with. If you're in an area you don't know quite well, or you're in public around other strangers, a level of caution. We don't want to be taken advantage of. No kidnapping, no dodgy touching, no drink spiking. But if you're at a place you're comfortable with and know, and the people who you're comfortable with just happen to live there, there really should be no problem at all. Unless the problem came when those uninvited guests came knocking on the door. Something Kaden didn't anticipate, hence why he was on guard past that point. That would be an exception there, and it would be understandable. I thought I'd just add that in right now, okay? So, the cousin on the move. The mum, the mum, Alicia Lee of Kaden Pressy, worried for that cousin, and then ends up being picked up. How? And where? Along the highway? Just sounds dodgy once again. So the cousin is on the move, in a vehicle with someone else, a friend or someone. At what point does she get out? Is she stranded on the highway, waiting to be picked up in the dark? What the fuck is going on? It sounds a bit reckless. Sounds a bit dodgy. If she was already in a vehicle, why did she get in it? Where was she going? Did she know? Was she being driven back? Normally, if you're in a vehicle and you're being driven back, you don't need someone else to come along and then pick you up again. Makes no sense. Unless who you're in the vehicle with, you don't trust, or the people, the parents, the guardians, or family, friends, or friends hear word about it and they don't trust the situation, so they catch up. But how do they meet if they're on different sides of the roads? Is it all down the highway or elsewhere? It's a bit of a mystery itself. It's weird, in my opinion. But that aside, 2:43, 43 minutes of sleeping. Upon being woken up by that call by the mother, Kaden, awake, looking around, and saw Noah Presgrove, Jack Newton, Jasmine Millan playing beer pong in the dining room, and that Isaac Rojas, Brylan Sweat, and Mikey was laying around, asleep, somewhat asleep. Now it starts becoming divided. The more people asleep for a certain set amount of time, the more likely they are innocent. The people who are asleep at the time of when Noah was about to leave and beyond, and providing they were asleep up until the point that the news was announced of the death of Noah, you'd consider that they're innocent. They couldn't have played a role if they were asleep throughout the ordeal, right? And some of these names that come up makes you think, well, they must be innocent as well. Like with Kaden, if they're asleep, they're out of it, they're not aware of what's going on after that point, must be innocent. Jack Newton tried doing the same thing. Oh yeah, I slept 2 in the morning. Yeah, because Kaden was supposedly going to go to sleep at 2 in the morning, he still saw Jack awake, not going to sleep, so that it was a lie. But for Kaden to publicly say he was going to sleep first time round 3 in the morning and saw all those guys awake, is what Kaden said back then, 3 in the morning. Did he meant to say 2 in the morning and he just got it mixed and muddled up? But I never saw it corrected. So that really confuses me, right? It seems like everything is brought back by 1 hour. And if that's the case, then what time did the ATV incident happen? What time did the shower happen? What time did Noah supposedly leave then? 3:30 or earlier before that? It's bringing everything back by an hour possibly and making me double think. You don't want that, especially when you thought you got the hang of the case. Does anyone else feel that way, right? And at least how it was worded originally with Kaden, he was about to go to sleep, but before he did, he saw the key people awake, alive, Noah as well, and then went to sleep at 3 in the morning. And then the next time he woke up was 5:15. But how it's worded here now is that 2 in the morning, Kaden notices the key people are awake an hour earlier, goes to sleep at 2 in the morning, at 2:43, awoken by that phone call. Because he's awoken, he's looking around, he can identify who is still awake, nothing's changed there, and then what? Goes back to sleep, and then 5:15 kicks in. Could you argue and say that the first time round when Kaden did his official statement and was claiming at 3 in the morning, roughly, when he went to sleep, that's what he meant by 2:43. 2:43 is closer to 3 a.m. than 2 a.m., right? 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. is a 1 hour difference. 2:43 to 3 a.m., a much smaller difference in time. Maybe it was just how it was worded back then, back when Kaden, first time round in his official statement, when he said he went to sleep at 3 a.m, or roughly, he meant to say, I went back to sleep. Not I went to sleep for the first time, but I went back to sleep. I fell off back to sleep around 3 a.m, which basically meant 2:43. That's the only way I can try and comprehend it, for it to make sense and for it not to sound contradictory to what, Kaden was originally stating. Do people agree or not? As said, when the wrong language or wording is used, it can make it sound like a fact when it's not, or when wrong language is used, it can make something sound like it's happening for the first time round, but it's actually the second time round. And that's how it appears to be here, in a way. But for Isaac, Brylan, Mikey to be laying about just like Kaden, it sounds like they're all asleep and they're all out of it. So if anything else happened, it would be with those that are awake, such as Noah, Jack, Jasmine. Interesting. 3 individuals specifically awake, 3 individuals that played some role just before or after Noah leaving the party. Noah himself being the victim, Jack Newton being the one who supposedly got very aggressive, vice versa, not too sure, but supposedly very aggressive argument between Noah and himself, Jack, shoving and pushing. Then you got Jasmine Millan, 11 minutes after Noah supposedly left at 3:30 by making that Snapchat post later deleted by claiming, well, Noah's missing, while smiling. Those 3 names. Interesting, which Kaden referenced, because I've looked at those 3 names, as you know. So yeah, we've got that. Next timestamp, the 5:15 one. Jack returns back, storms in. The doors bang and clash, reverberating rattles loud enough to wake Kaden up, as he said. 5:15. Jack returns, announces the death of Noah. And then Jack Newton took off in his truck, leaves the house to head back to the highway. Oh. I don't remember hearing that before. First time I've heard that, if I'll be honest with you. How it was worded originally, at 5:15, Jack got back, announced the news, and then buried his head in a pillow or something and started crying and couldn't control himself. And that's what Carter Combs said, or within the community, right? But it looks like that Jack had no time for burying his head in the sand or in a pillow. He took off quickly back to the scene. In a normal situation, that would make sense. You want to let people know what's happened, but you don't want to leave the body. You don't want to leave a loved one, whether they're alive, dead, or in the process of dying. You want to stay, you want to remain, but you also want to inform other people. But where was Jack's phone? Besides letting people know, did Jack return back to the house at 5:15 to announce the news, but more importantly, to get a hold of his phone so then he could call people about the situation? I wonder. I mean, he only decided to call his father at 6:05 in the morning, hours later, to say, oh yeah, by the way, my best friend's died. But I supposedly knew 4 in the morning. I thought I'd wait a few hours to then tell you. And in between, we'll get the hopes up about doing a fishing trip, even though I know that my best friend's died, but hey-ho. What? Exactly. Weird. So, did Jack, before 5:15, maybe even 4 in the morning, when, you know, in that text with Roy, Jack said Noah passed away 4 in the morning. 4 in the morning, between 5:15 in the morning, that Jack is away from the party house, okay. But did Jack have his phone with him? If Jack had his phone with him at the highway, he didn't need to rush back to the house and alert everybody. All Jack had to do was call someone from the party and say, hey, Noah's dead, get down here. Because if Jack made it back to the house and then quickly returned back to the scene because he didn't want to leave Noah too long, well then Jack didn't have to leave in the first place if Jack had his phone and if he was still thinking that people were still awake at the party, right? Unless Jack didn't have his phone, that's all I can think of. The only other exception would be if Jack had his phone, did make a call, no one answered, so he thought, screw this, I'll head back to the house quickly and tell him that way the news. And then, once I've done that, I can return back. There's different ways of looking at it, right? Different possibilities. But 5:15, we've heard that consistently from Kaden to, I guess, other people in the community. It's just not really been contested. The only one that did contest it recently was Stevie Howard by saying it wasn't 5:15, it was 6:15. Maybe Kaden got it wrong, or his memory because of the trauma. But then again, I'm sure Sarah Long also mentioned that as well about trauma and not being able to think clearly. But those people weren't even there at the party to see it, so how would they know? How would they know better, right? They're just speaking on behalf of Jack or what Jack's told them, and that isn't always consistent enough. Kaden was there to see it for himself and experience it. But as we saw up to now, there have been some inconsistencies and contradictions made by Kaden and stuff that doesn't quite add up externally with external information what we've heard of along the way. So, you know, you can be skeptical if you want, that would be understandable. But yeah, the thing that I need to mention there before we go any further, that with 5:15 and 2:43, in between 2:43 and 5:15, Kaden went back to sleep, right? But in between that, from 2:43 when he woke up the first time round, since going to sleep for the first time 2 in the morning on Monday, at 2:43, whilst Isaac, Brylan and Mikey were all laying down, they were in a certain position, as for one being on the floor, one being on one of the sofas. I can't remember which way around it was, but basically the next time round they woke up, or more so Kaden did, when, you know, Jack stormed in at 5:15, Brylan, Sweat and Mikey swapped places as to where they were sleeping. 2:43, Brylan, Sweat and Mikey were sleeping in certain areas, and then hours later at 5:15 they were in the opposite places. They've switched. Why would they switch? You would switch places as if you got up and walked about or did something, and you both simultaneously woke up at that time to go off and do whatever. And then heading back to sleep, but instead of like, oh, you go on the floor and I'll go on the chair, it's the other way around. So in between that happening, Kaden was asleep, and so was Isaac. It was Brylan and Mikey that were on the move. What were they doing in between 2:43 and 5:15 at some point for them to switch positions where they were sleeping? Because you'd have to literally stand up and change places like musical chairs. Why did they both wake up at a certain time? Why did they both change positions? Where did both of them go in between that? Were they responsible for the death of Noah Presgrove? Did they just simply stretch their legs? Did they go outside? Where did they go? How far did they go? And how long did they spend away from sleeping next to Kaden? That is a little bit odd. When people are unaccounted for at a certain set time, you could argue and say, well, maybe they didn't do anything bad. They didn't do anything dodgy. They just simply woke up and thought, you know what? I'll sleep on the floor now and you sleep here. Kind of like when you get like security guards where one is on duty, you know, monitoring the area, the other one is sleeping, and then they change positions and now like, right, you spent enough time searching, I'll do it, now you can get some rest. That's all I can think of. A bit stupid, to be honest, because you think once you're out asleep, you would remain asleep until you wake up, and so does everyone else. It looks like I've just got low battery on the phone. Oh no, that's really bad. That's really bad, so I must speed up in a way, or try to at least. But let's just keep on going. So yeah, 5:15, Jack returns, announces Noah's death. Jack Newton takes off again, leaves the house. Kaden Pressy, as we've heard in the past, and he's mentioned it again, him, but also the other guys' names are now mentioned, which they weren't back then, which is obviously a positive. Kaden, Brylan, Isaac, and Mikey, all those guys that were previously asleep, whilst the others like Jasmine, Noah, and Jack were awake earlier on, and whatever happened past that point. But these guys got into the red Cherokee of Kaden's, that's consistent with his original statement, drove to the highway. They arrived. Upon arriving, though, Kaden saw a semi-truck, a service truck at the scene. Now, when I first heard that, I was thinking, oh, Tyler Hardy. And then that other guy, the first caller that called in at 5:46 a.m. But it doesn't make sense. Kaden said that he got to the highway at 5:20 a.m. and that he left the highway at 5:30 a.m. It was 5:46 a.m. when the first truck driver, service truck driver, or another type of truck driver who called in officially the first time round upon coming across Noah's body and no one else being around. Then came a second caller whose name and call has been hidden, from the public. And then the final caller at 5:53, short difference in between them, when Tyler Hardy called in and said, I'm the first on scene. But it was actually the first caller that supposedly was first on scene. But in terms of what Kaden was saying, still earlier on. By the time he arrived, by the time he left, Kaden and the group of guys he was with, they were there before the first caller and the third caller, Tyler Hardy, got there. So normally, normally you'd think that, okay, so you got at least 2 truck drivers in some kind of vehicles, come on down, pass by the body, individually make calls in, and then turn about or park up and then wait until police highway patrol get there. That would make sense. And that when Kaden got there much earlier, before those truck drivers got there, when Kaden said he was ordered to leave, I was thinking, oh, because there was already authority there. And then when we heard about that hidden recorded footage, which I guess is around the time of 5:20 a.m. or just before, because there was some talk in the background that the hidden recorded footage showed Kaden being told to leave or was leaving at the time of when the footage was rolling. So when that hidden footage was rolling and people in the background claimed that there was a police guy, a volunteer firefighter, Bub Wilcoxon, and 2 other clothed individuals, where does it fall in with these service truck drivers then? And one had a big bushy beard. The hell's going on there? You know what I'm saying? So in total, you're saying that Kaden came across 2 separate trucks, drivers, members of the general public, getting on with the jobs early hours of the morning, supposedly, but they don't call the police. That's normal. And then they just leave. And then at 5:46, you have the first caller driving on by, passes, got to turn back round. And by the time he turns back round, Tyler Hardy is already coming on down and parks up first to make the final call about the body. And when both of those truck drivers have arrived, before they got there, another set of truck drivers were there, but didn't call the police. And Kaden was present to see them parked up. And at the latest, when Kaden said at 5:30, he and the boys left the place because they were ordered to by one of the truck drivers. Well, they're not exactly authoritative figures, but still respecting elders quoted by Kaden. That was at 5:30. The first call made officially was at 5:46. And that was along the way when the first truck driver just got there or so. And then so did the other, and then the other. Also Tyler Hardy. That's weird, isn't it? Those 2 initial truck drivers, which Kaden saw, those 2 truck drivers should have called the police in then. And that would have been before 5:46, guaranteed. Because they were already there once Kaden got down there for the first time at 5:20 a.m. So at 5:20 a.m., even at 5:15 when Jack returned back to the house, we said, well, before 5:15, in between 4 a.m. when he said that's when Noah passed away, and at 5:15 when he returned back to the house, in between that hour and 15-minute time difference period, Jack must have been on the highway. For what reason unknown, came across the body. So at what time did those 2 truck drivers get there then? And why didn't Jack call it into the police? Why didn't those truck drivers call it into the police? Why did it take at least an hour, if not more, for another set of 2 random truck drivers to come on down for them to make the calls? But the initial 2 truck drivers, the originals, did fuck all. What the hell is going on? So you got 4 separate trucks. 2 lots come earlier, don't do anything about it, don't really help. Then the other 2 truck drivers come on down by 5:46 a.m. onwards, park up, and then call it into the police. That's extremely dodgy. What is the point in pulling over to assess the scene and think, we don't need to do anything? And then for Jack to be there as well with them. Was Jack there before those truck drivers got down there, or vice versa? I wonder. And then Kaden, being in the dark about it because he's been asleep most of the time, awoken at 5:15, comes on down, there's already people there. Was Kaden assuming that the police has already been called? Maybe. Kaden wasn't there long enough. I mean, if Kaden was there long enough, past a certain point, Kaden could have been like, you know what? Why is the police not coming? Are you sure you called them? Because you don't always question, do you, immediately? If you see people already at the scene, you'd be assuming that, oh yeah, they've already taken hands of things, they've already called into the right authorities and whatnot. There's no need to question, especially with a high intense situation. Yeah, that's kind of weird, that. Now, you may have just noticed a bit of a jump cut just then, and that's because I was on low battery and I did not want to risk continuing speaking and then the phone dying. So I've just charged it up right now. I'll continue on, keep the flow going as best as I can. But yeah, with the description given by Kaden, 5:20 got there, 5:30 told to leave by the same guys he came across, which was the 2 truck drivers, identities and names unknown of, but not Tyler Hardy. Now, I don't want to skip ahead too much because there were some key points mentioned along the way, and I'll make sure to acknowledge them as we're going along, because there was some additional detail as well, just simply upon getting there, which needs to be highlighted. But apologies if I'm jumping ahead, but it's weird, this. 2 truck drivers, and as well, the descriptions. These don't sound like police guys. These don't sound like volunteer firefighters as what was claimed in that hidden recorded footage. So the details in that hidden recorded footage, are they exactly true or false? And if they're true, does that make Kaden Pressy wrong then? What the hell's going on? It makes no sense at all, at this moment in time at least. So, besides getting there and only having about 10 minutes present, being honest, it's different again. Originally, in one of Kaden's original statements, he said once he got down there to the highway, to the body, 2 to 5 minutes later, they were told to leave. Yet how it's worded here, 5:20 arrived, 5:30 left. That's 10 minutes. Now, maybe I'm being too critical, but I'm being specific, right? Kaden originally said he was there 2 to 5 minutes, then had to leave. But how it's worded in this interview, he was there at least 10 minutes, then told to leave. There is a difference. A lot can happen in 10 minutes than in 2 to 5 minutes, right? So I just thought I'd mention the inconsistencies there with Kaden. Even if it's only small scale, I'm only telling you because I remember and I know what was said previously, okay? But yeah. So the description of the service truck, the order of it, service truck, Jack's truck, which was lined up with the body, I guess, facing north, and then a semi-truck, which was behind the body facing south. So that would be towards Terrell. All on the same side as the road, but pointing in different directions. In terms of how it was worded by Tyler Hardy, a different truck driver, well, in a pickup truck actually, not an actual truck, but a pickup, at 5:53 onwards, when he got down there, those trucks which Kaden saw weren't there anymore, which makes it weird, right? These trucks that were there earlier at the time of when Kaden was there and Jack, are they the same people in that hidden recorded footage? Tampering with the body? I wonder. And why? Fully grown individuals with beards, it would make me think, are they somehow related to some of the party goers cleaning up after them? Makes you think. And why 2 as well, in trucks? Couldn't have used other vehicles? Weird. Members of the general public, those truck drivers, or related to some in the community, family members of the, or parents, or the friends of the party goers, who knows? It just seems a bit weird, right? But the next thing that was mentioned, upon getting there, let's not forget about that, because this is a significant part. Kaden said that they all got out of their vehicles, including Jack in his own. Got to the area, got to the body to see what was happening. that the service truck driver was speaking to Jack Newton. About what? Who knows? Did this conversation occur one time, or did it happen earlier? Because if Jack, before 5:15, was already at the highway, and like our question, were those two truck drivers already there or came after Jack? Is that why Jack then had a conversation with the truck driver onwards, at least 5:20 then, to discuss what happened earlier or what's going to happen next? Whilst that was going on, it's important to note that in recent time, I believe it was Stevie Howard stating that when they got down there, no one got out of the vehicle. And yet Kaden, who was there, got out of the vehicle as he stated, and so did the others. So that highlights that Stevie Howard is lying, comes across like that. Stevie Howard wasn't there, of course, so how would she even know? Oh, because she was told from what Jack said. But that's weird. It just so happens that Kaden said, besides us getting out of the vehicle, Jack got out of his as well. So it looks like what Jack says is different to what Kaden says. So is Jack the liar then? And Stevie Howard is a liar as well, or just a bit delusional and being convinced by third-party information and just passing it on like a puppet or something. Could be seen like that. Whilst that's going on though, and people are out of the vehicle inspecting what's happening, Isaac Rojas, Isaac being the one you saw in the party footage holding that rifle behind Noah Presgrove, Isaac was crying really badly as Kaden described, and that's a normal reaction. I mean, people do react differently to bad, sad news, but for Isaac to be crying, obviously it impacted him pretty hard. And at that moment, it was normal, it was natural human behaviour. What happened later, though, could be questionable. But yeah, while that's going on, Kaden said that he was going to return back to his vehicle to get a towel. Why was there a towel in the vehicle at the time? I don't know, but it was there. And he wanted to use it in order to cover up Noah's body for privacy reasons. Could that towel have contaminated the scene, harmed any key evidence or DNA? Maybe, but I guess at the time you're not thinking about all that. You just want some privacy, or you want to respect Noah in a way, and that's fully understandable. If there's no other way of concealing the body or covering it up with like curtains or railings or anything like that, like what they do with the police at times, then use the next best thing. Now, that towel that was supposedly going to be used, Kaden didn't get the chance to do it and was told to leave. But I do remember it being described. I don't know about in the autopsy, I can't remember there, but in the community it was described that there was some kind of sheeting over Noah's body and it soaked up some of the blood. Is there a possibility that the towel was left at the scene when Kaden drove away with the guys, and that either Jack or the truck drivers used that towel and covered Noah's body? Maybe not, because when the first caller and Tyler Hardy came on down, the original truck drivers from what we know of at least and what's been mentioned, the first ones on scene, even though they're not now, when they came on down, there was no mention of a towel, no mention of shorts either. Only that they were off Noah's body, even though Kaden at the time saw that they were on his body. It's what happened in between that when Kaden left and when the other set of truck drivers arrived in between that. And that would have consisted, likely, of Jack Newton and those two truck drivers. Were they all in on it? Sounds dodgy, doesn't it? So, with that going on, the left Kaden at 5:30, and then just some additional points within the interview in the particular order how it was worded, right? Because some additional questions were asked, saying, so what was the condition of Noah? What was the situation with the shorts? And Kaden said, well, when I was there at 5:20, Noah's body was wearing black shorts. He wasn't naked, he was wearing black shorts. Okay, we've heard that before in the previous statement. That's consistent with what Kaden said. He also mentioned, though, that the body of Noah's was on his side and twisted. So on your side as if you were laying asleep, but the chest area was more pointing towards the ground and the head was twisted like that. Twisted, the body. Twisted as in naturally twisted, or literally because the neck vertebrae was broken? Probably. A broken neck can flop about. A broken arm can wobble and flop about. So you pretty much get the idea. That's likely the reason for it being twisted. I was saying back when he was dumped on the ground, that's what caused the breakages within the body. No. But when you're carrying someone or you're disposing of someone, how they land or the position they fall in will be different to when they're alive and different to when something's broken compared to when something's not. When something's broken, it can bend in ways it's not supposed to, right? So you get the idea. The neck being twisted over that way, possibly because of the breakages within, one of the main reasons for that, and how the body landed as well. So, to make sure I've not missed any notes whatsoever, was there anything that stood out besides the body being twisted laying on the side? At that moment, when Kaden saw the body for the first time round, besides Noah being clothed, even though the autopsy said a different story, that Noah's arms and legs were spread out. Why? I don't know. Is that how he landed when he was dumped on the side of the road, spread out like this? Maybe. But the other key thing is that Noah's body wasn't in the fetal position when Kaden was there. But when Kaden left and time passed by, whatever happened, body tampered with supposedly, then he was in the fetal position past that point, as it was mentioned in the autopsy report, news articles, etc. So can you let me know what you think about that there? I'll show you the notes in just a second as to what was present, because you would have seen me look down more at the sheet, and that's because I'm reading things I've never heard of before. So I've got to keep looking back so I don't make any mistakes. So you can see there, it is reversed, the camera, like a mirror. You see it there, right? You see it there. A lot more written this time round and more new stuff to me. There might be a chance that some of this might not be new to you. I've not heard it come up before, and there would have been times and opportunities for that to happen, so maybe more people are shocked by this than anything. I have seen some comments by people, only a few, saying, what if all along, whilst Kaden was the true innocent one, it was like the complete opposite? Imagine all that shock and twist. All I'll say is nothing will surprise me, but for now at least, let's just focus on with what Kaden has had to say recently, okay? Because at this point within, it looked like it was visibly hard for him to recall and say stuff because it was upsetting, and that's understandable, but, you know, let's just check for more consistencies or inconsistencies. Reference again, Monday, 5:20, at that point, LE weren't present. And that was mentioned by Kaden himself when he was there and when he was about to leave. The police were not there, nowhere to be seen. And as I said, Kaden, because there was other people present, could have been assuming they probably called the police and we're just waiting now. But from the looks of it, they never came. And that the only time when they did officially come is when someone officially reported it in. 5:46 a.m. So, by the time Noah left, by the time Kaden left at 5:30, the next key timestamp was 5:46. It's like, what, a 10, 16-minute time difference for Kaden to pack up and go and the others, and the two truck drivers and Jack Newton. Within 16 minutes, they all packed up, left, took shorts with them, placed new ones nearby, and then that first caller came on by, saw Noah's body by the side naked and no one else around, and the same thing that was mentioned by Tyler Hardy as well. Well, it looked like people got on it pretty quick, didn't they? Very interesting. I know I said I was going to write out a timeline, but in a way I'm glad I didn't, because look what's happened just recently. More stuff's come out which may go against some previous things. So yeah, patience is needed. So to summarise it, at the scene, at the time, the people that were present was Kaden Pressy himself, Brylan Sweat, Jack Newton, Isaac Rojas, Mikey, the service truck driver, and the semi-truck driver all at the scene. Enough people and not one person called the police. But it's a typical case of when one arrives first, everyone that arrives after will be assuming that the first person in line made the call and wouldn't question it. It's like if you're crossing at the lights like a pedestrian, just like myself. I would get there was already a handful of people already waiting there to cross. I got along and was thinking, this is taking a long time, and not one bastard decided to press the button to cross the road. Lazy idiots on the way to college, obviously not intelligent enough to press a button to cross. Instead, oh, let's walk across the road and get hit by a car, you fucking idiot. Get a grip of yourself. So I had to press the button myself. But that was only because I stuck around long enough to realise, this is taking a bit of time. So I'm wondering if Kaden Pressy and maybe some of the other guys remained on scene and they weren't ordered to leave. They could have thought, you know what? Someone obviously didn't call the police because they ain't coming. But, you know, they were only there for like 10 minutes, so they wouldn't have had time to think or question. But besides that, Kaden Pressy did say whilst he was there, he did not confront or see the semi-truck driver specifically. What about the service truck one then? I don't know. It says the service truck driver told Kaden to leave. Service truck driver. I think Kaden said he had a beard or something, and that service truck driver was pissed off, said, you need to back the F off, you need to go. Why though? Now, Kaden said he respects his elders for good reason and followed the orders and left. But why was that truck driver pissed off? Pissed off because he wanted to do something to Noah's body and take the shorts off, possibly, but with having an audience, he wasn't allowed to do that, couldn't do it. I wonder. When we think of that hidden recorded footage, was it Jack Newton who was recording it then? And then the service truck driver, the semi-truck driver were there in shot on the camera, and then two other people as well. It doesn't quite tie in with how Kaden was referencing it. So it sounds a little bit dodgy, if I'll be honest with you. But a service truck driver who got there before Kaden did said, you need to leave. Is that because this service truck driver was unaware that Kaden is a friend to Noah? Or did that service truck driver just not care to know or acknowledge and just wanted him gone? Did he want him gone because he didn't want an audience, naturally? Or did he not want him there because that truck driver wanted to take Noah's shorts off? Makes you think, doesn't it? And just to reinforce, Kaden Pressy said Tyler Hardy wasn't one of the drivers. Tyler Hardy came later when Kaden was long gone. That seems consistent to what I've heard so far, at least. I don't know if that applies to you. Kaden did say, though, that Jack stayed at the scene. He was allowed to. What? Why is Jack allowed to stay? A best friend to Noah. And whilst Kaden Pressy isn't a best friend to Noah, Kaden was a friend of Noah and closer friend to Jack. So they should have been allowed to stay there, in a way. The only reason why Jack got special privileges to remain there was because initially that's the truck driver, was it the semi-truck or the I don't know, one of the truck drivers, you know, said by Kaden, had a word with Jack, maybe about staying on site, possibly. Who knows? But the main reason to why I think Jack was allowed to stay, but the likes of the others, Kaden, were told to go, is because Jack got there first, and then the truck drivers came along after. So truck drivers could be thinking, you know what, you're first on scene, you're a key individual, a key witness, you need to remain here. As for anybody that turns up later, they could be seen as rubbernecking, staring like an audience, a crowd. There's no need to be here, you need to go. Even if you are related or friends, you don't need to be here. You can interpret it different ways, just like I did earlier. But, you know, for Jack to be allowed to stay, that sounds suspicious, doesn't it? What went on after Kaden left if Jack remained? If Jack was still there with the truck drivers, that would have been around the time of that hidden secret recording. So was Jack seen in that footage, or was Jack behind the camera? Ooh, sounds a bit dark, a little bit deep. Do you think it's weird? I don't know if I'll do many polls tonight, if I can keep up with it all, but I definitely did last night, so you can always leave your thoughts along the way. What else mention? So, with that going on, Kaden Pressy and the guys who originally went there all returned back to the house, whilst Jack stayed at the scene with the truck guys. Once they returned back to the house, Kaden and the others came across the girls crying in the house, which, you know, normal human behaviour, once again, upset as to hearing the news, just like Isaac was earlier. It says Brylan sweat, Isaac, the one that was crying heavily, and Mikey then went to sleep. That's consistent with Kaden's original statement. That's good. But it is odd. But there's three guys, whilst some visibly upset, just thought, you know what, we made it back to the house, let's go to sleep, just like that. How could you even sleep when hearing about the news of someone dying, especially when it's someone you know and maybe friends with? As for Kaden, he couldn't go to sleep. He wasn't able to. Too many things on his mind, which once again is normal human behaviour in that way. Kaden said he watched TV for 30 minutes up to an hour long. And then at some point, a girl, he said Logan, but then he said some girl, so he can't even remember. A girl came up to him, sat down and spoke to him. What about? Don't know. It wasn't really explained, but that was just a little detail along the side. So you could say it's a bit weird how people can just sleep it off just like that, despite what they've just seen, especially seeing it for themselves. You'd think it'd be playing on their minds, right? Yeah, it's kind of odd. The next thing that was mentioned by Kaden was Jasmine Millan's mom, known as Renee Millan, someone we've looked at briefly recently. Something I was going to, do in a separate video. I'll still do that, of course. Renee Millan arrived at the house at 6:30 in the morning. That's what Kaden said. Renee herself said she got there at 7 in the morning. That's a 30-minute time difference. Quite a big time difference, right? So that's still a little bit inconsistent there. Considering they said that they left at 7 in the morning. And yet Renee saying she just got there at 7 in the morning. How do you get that wrong? Is Kaden right or is Renee right? Is Renee lying? Did Renee get it mixed up, make a mistake? The hell's going on? But we'll just stick with what Kaden said. 6:30 in the morning. Kaden himself said, let's clean up the beer. Let's clean up the cans. Tidy up. Now, it might have been worded by Renee Millan like that herself, or quoted, and people interpreted it as if it was Renee, the mother, cleaning up everything, like she is the one cleaning up all the evidence. But Kaden himself agreed it was important to clean up too. So Kaden played a role there, right? He said it himself. Then it says, Renee was at the scene of the highway for 30 minutes. And Kaden said that was close to when he and his guys left the scene. My question is, by the time Renee Millan made it down to the scene on the highway and stayed there for 30 minutes, was that when Tyler Hardy and the other truck driver, the original names what we've heard of, the proper callers to the dispatcher, were they already there by then? Probably, yeah. So like 5:46, 5:53 onwards, getting close to 6 in the morning, and when Jack was there at 6:05. But my question is, okay, Jack's phone pinged at 6:05 near to the body because he made the call to his father. Jack was down there at 5:20. He was even there earlier on, but 5:20 onwards to 5:30 when Kaden left, Jack remained. How long did Jack remain there for? All the way till 6:05, because it's getting close to that time, so he never really left. And he was there for a long time. We're going a bit deep off topic there in a way, but I just wanted to kind of add that in. But yeah, so what else do we have? I've got to catch up. BS, IR, Mikey went to sleep. Yeah, I've seen that. So we'll talk about the Renee Millan situation. Renee at the scene for 30 minutes. How come Renee Millan was at the scene for 30 minutes, but Kaden was only allowed to be there for 10 minutes? Different sets of people, different waves of people coming and going? Probably. So Kaden came across stricter, maybe dodgier individuals. Renee came across better people who were at the scene onwards. That's the way I look at it, right? But anyway, says, whilst at the party house, Kane said Renee was adamant about the guns being taken out of the house. A handful of them, quite a few. How many rifles, guns were there? I don't know, it wasn't given. But to take the guns out and then take them to Caleb Newton. Now, that wasn't mentioned in this interview, but if you look at Renee Millan's statement, or at least Noah's aunt's statement, it's mentioned there about passing it on to Caleb. We'll do a standalone video about that at some point, because these themes are cropping up all of a sudden, aren't they, once again. In terms of the, cleaning up, Renee Millan said we should probably leave this house before the police arrive, so it doesn't cause any mess, any scenes, or any further questioning. You could argue and say that Renee Millan is looking out for Kaden Pressy, Brylan Sweat, Isaac, and Mikey. What about the other girls? Carter Combs, Avery Combs, they're just left there at the house to cry. Okay, so every person for themselves, but that set of people, we don't live here, so we probably best leave so we don't make the scene more confusing or odd. It seems like Renee is looking out for some of the party goers, which I guess is a good thing, but to say the line, we should leave before the police arrive, that literally sounds like a bank robber situation scenario or a murder scene. We've just killed someone, but you know what? We probably should leave before the police turn up. Too many questions, not enough answers. There's a time and place when you use that line. Just like when Sarah Long said, oh yeah, Monday morning around 8 in the morning, I went to the scene. Oh, you went to the highway? No, I went to the party house. Why did you call it a scene? Scene as in crime scene. We should leave before the police arrive. Different person said that, Renee, but you get the idea. It's just these weird quotes. You normally wouldn't say those type of things, or at least in my mind you wouldn't. Especially when you look back on it retrospectively, it just stands out. Now, a few descriptions were given as for certain weapons and firearms belonging to whom. Kaden said that there was a 12-gauge shotgun that was Isaac's. It was also confirmed that in that party footage, Isaac behind Noah and Brylan's Sunday night outside, Isaac holding that rifle, that was the 12-gauge shotgun. So that clears that up, okay? There was a hunting rifle, which belonged to Brylan Sweat, okay? And then an AR-15 with a thermal scope. Any more attachments? I don't know, can't remember. And that belonged to Jack Newton. Interesting. I don't know if it still applies now, but it just so happens that at some point at least, when I looked at Jack Newton's Facebook profile, his channel art background had the AR-15 rifle in the background. How interesting. What would make it suspicious now is, after making this video and referring to that, If Jack removes that background and changes it, could be a sign. Just saying. When people start changing and making adjustments afterwards, once others are caught onto it, might be onto something. You never know. So, that was mentioned there about the guns. Not saying that those people bought them, but the parents could have bought them as a present and then they were allowed to use them whenever and wherever because the rules aren't that strict over that way. Oh well, whatever. Then it says, Kaden mentioned how him, Renee, Jasmine, Millan, Isaac, Mikey and Brylan all left the house, the party house, at 7 a.m. So Renee got there at 6:30, but they all left by 7 a.m. Yeah, I'm sure Renee Millan said herself in an individual post it was 7 in the morning. But then there was a post by either Jasmine Millan or Jade Millan, one of the daughters to Renee, that said, no, it was actually at 8 in the morning. Or, you know, an hour difference. And it's like, how do you get it so mixed up? What the hell's going on? But, you know, 6:30, 7 a.m, well, there is a big difference whether you arrive or you leave. And Kaden is saying that they left, all of them, at 7 in the morning. Yet Renee has previously said she got there at 7 in the morning, not 6:30. So that's inconsistent. Doesn't look too good, does it? But I'm assuming when they said they're all left, it means Carter Combs and Avery Combs left at the house. What about Stephanie Millan? So, okay, Kaden, Isaac, Mikey and Brylan, they all left together in their vehicle and Kaden dropped the guys off one by one. Renee, the mother, obviously picked up Jasmine, but no mention of Stephanie. Kaden never mentioned Stephanie Millan's name, yet Stephanie in that text message online was claiming to be at the party. The hell's going on there? That's weird. But then what about Jade Millan? I don't know if Jade said she was there at the party or she just remembers what Noah was like in the past at older parties. But that name didn't come up by Kaden, so obviously not that relevant. But I'm assuming that when Renee left with the others, Renee left in her vehicle, took Jasmine with her. Anyone else? Stephanie Millan? I don't know. That wasn't mentioned. Weird. And that when dropping off, Kaden dropped off some of the guys at or near to Duncan. Okay, whatever. It says Kaden got to his own house at 8:10 in the morning, Monday. And he also mentioned it was hard to remember everything. So when going over the interview, he said that he's told the story over and over again. He's told his mother, Alicia Lee, who will know a lot, and additional details which may have been missed out in this particular interview that Kaden did. So because Kaden said it's hard to remember everything and there was a lot to say, it's understandable why you could get mixed up or why you might miss out the odd detail. It might come across that I was being too critical or too negative of Kaden. As I said, when Kaden was speaking, it was pretty clear. He showed respect. You know, he held himself together despite it being hard to talk about. He did well. But when there are inconsistencies, there are inconsistencies. And when I see it, and when I see contradictions, regardless of what human it is, I will acknowledge it. Just like how if I did it myself, I will acknowledge it when I can, okay? And I did say throughout this video, I was lenient towards Kaden in terms of a possible understanding behind it, a possible missing context. And if that ties in line with what Kaden was saying about not remembering everything, but he told his mother everything and the mother will know extra details, that could fill in some of the blanks which I had for today. So if Alicia Lee does come across this video, hopefully she doesn't take it the wrong way, the negative way, and as well watches from start to finish to understand my perspective on the situation, okay? Obviously, someone like Kaden would know a lot more than me because he was actually there to see stuff, okay? But basing it off making comparisons, I might have seen more than what he's seen, depending, or from what one can remember. Because if he did remember what's been said elsewhere, or more so remembers what he said previously, that would have been rectified. It wasn't. So that's why we got the going to sleep at 3 in the morning, not now 2 in the morning, and then some other stuff. Okay? Final few details which were mentioned. I'll just fold the page over. Just put it there. Mikey. I'm assuming Mikey is that Mike Tyson guy, nicknamed by the likes of Brylan Sweat at the party. Kaden said Mikey has mental issues. Okay, it's one way of wording it. Mikey has PTSD. What caused the PTSD? What triggers it? That wasn't explained, probably a personal reason, personal matter. But if you're having a party and you're inviting someone around that has PTSD and there's loud sounds and noises, if there was any gunshots or anything, you know, if hunting and shooting, could that have triggered any PTSD at any point? When someone may be a bit unstable, is it worth inviting them to a very busy house party of 30 to 40 people? I guess it differs from what the PTSD is and what actually triggers it. I'm sure people would know what triggers it and what doesn't. So Mikey would know himself whether he should go or not, but he did. But Kaden was saying on the journey back, the likes of Mikey was, you know, Mikey was impacted by it, and his PTSD was kind of catching up with him in terms of comprehending what's happened to his friend Noah, and as well that Isaac was still crying in the car, upset. Yet these people were able to get back to the house, sleep it off, then wake back up again, and then still disturbed. How do people switch on and off with emotions like that? Whatever. Now, when talking about the after effects and hearing about the later news, which followed onwards post-death of Noah, so like with the later stuff what we started hearing about, Kaden referred to saying he knew that someone messed with Noah's body. Well, that's consistent with the original statement of Kaden's that it was tampered with. We've seen that. But that thought, that idea, or being woken up inside only came about 1 week after. 1 week after being close to when the other party goers had another party at the house again. Now, Kaden didn't mention anything about that. I wonder what his thoughts are about that happening, because Justin Roy mentioned it. Interesting. But with the body being tampered with, and that's all to do with Kaden at the time, 5:20 in the morning, Monday, came across Noah wearing black shorts. Fast forward onwards in the autopsy report and the news stating that Noah was naked and shorts were folded nearby and they weren't black. That goes against Kaden. And when Kaden tried telling it to the police didn't fully believe it exactly. But when Kaden did have that interview with one of the police guys known as Zachary Wright, one of the key individuals that was present early on in the case when questioning other people at the party, it was by October the 9th. September, October, kind of like close to a month passing by of silence, and then Kaden was interviewed. Why such the delay? Why was it dragged out so long, I wonder? Then, Kaden said when Jack was interviewed, whether that be around the same time or earlier on, Jack said that Noah was hit by a vehicle. Kaden responded to that in the interview and said he was disappointed that that was the claim because the injuries and the condition and how he was found did not match that like cause of death. And I think most of us can agree on that, and other people have since, and it's been ruled out by the police, yet Jack was adamant it was a possible hit and run. And ever since, Stevie Howard has jumped on that as well. Why do they keep pushing a false narrative even though it's been ruled out? Because they want to believe it's that's caused it, a hit and run, and not something else, but still a hit and run done with a form of intent or a form of foul play, not to own up or stop by and call it into the police. That would still be a bad outcome, more of a cowardly outcome and lack of closure. Some people may wish for an accidental death rather than a painful death and a murder death, because if it turned out to be murder and pain, it'd be more upsetting to those people. That's why like victim families maybe a bit delusional at times, because as bad as it is the news that's happened, they just want to imagine that the person's final moments were peaceful, calm, they weren't scared, and it was natural causes. But in this situation, obviously it wasn't, and it was a lot more brutal and rough. Is that why Jack is thinking something else caused it, because he doesn't want to admit to the real truth because it's too upsetting, same as Stevie Howard? Or is it because they do actually know the reality of it, but they're trying to minimise, play it down, or just do a form of deflection, misdirection, maybe? But yeah, Kaden was visibly disappointed with Jack at that point. Now, moving on, what else? Placed the shorts near to Noah. So that's what Kaden said, referencing the shorts were placed near to Noah based off what he heard of, based off, was it mentioned in the autopsy? Well, when I looked, it didn't mention it unless it was on a different page, which I didn't have at the time, but it was mentioned in articles as well. It was mentioned by key people within the case, okay? And Kaden said it himself now. And the reason why that's very interesting is because at 5:53 Monday morning, when Kaden was long gone by then, when Tyler Hardy came along, Tyler said there was clothing in the middle of the road. Now, Tyler said clothing, not shorts, but clothing. That could be a top, could be a hat, could be a glove, could be a shoe. But as what we've seen and heard, even at the party, Noah had a form of shoes on, shorts, chain, hat. So at the time of when Tyler came on down, after Kaden, shorts present, just not on him. Where were they then? That could be what Tyler meant by in the middle of the road. Now, Justin Roy, although Justin Roy did his interview before the dispatch calls were released, Justin said that Tyler saw more things, but they can't be revealed. Have they been revealed yet? No. So what else did Tyler see, which others didn't? Did Tyler see more than what Kaden saw? Who knows? But the only other thing that Noah would have been wearing, such as at the party, was his own hat, unless his hat was in the middle of the road. But it wasn't earlier, because when Kaden came across Noah's body, he was just wearing shorts and the mismatching shoes, one of which was belonging to Kaden, right? That was it. And then the chain as well, which was later confirmed with the investigation. But as for a hat, no reference of it. As for a top, no mention of it at all, nor at the party either. So what Tyler saw most likely would have been the shorts, but for him to be in the middle of the road doesn't tie in with the original claim that they were by the side of Noah's body. So that's weird. And as for the black shorts, Kaden said he believes that they were taken away by the dodgy people, whoever they were, once he left, to get rid of evidence, to hide stuff. Weird. Now, last but not least, we move on to the golf club situation. Kaden is asked about that, and he talks about it. He says that originally golf clubs were Dalen's. He was unaware at the time. Dalen, the brother to Noah, passed them on to Noah for Noah to take down to the party on the Saturday. It was on his Bronco. And then they played with them. Kaden, Noah, Brylan, Isaac all played with the golf clubs and hit stuff with them. Did it cause any breakages or damage? I don't know. That wasn't mentioned. But it could have if you hit a hard surface. Kaden Pressy said, onwards, post-death, onwards, at whatever point it was. Kaden was hanging out with Jack and another friend. That other friend wasn't mentioned as for details or name because they didn't attend the party previously, so they play no role in the investigation, supposedly. But Kaden, Jack, and that other friend were hanging out together at the scrap yard, which was basically a scrap pile behind Jack Newton's house, Caleb Newton's house. Wow. Wait, well, they said behind Jack Newton's house. I don't know if Caleb Newton lives there as well, but at least how it was worded at the time, not that long ago, really, when they said scrapyard, I literally thought a proper scrapyard business. But how it's worded here by Kaden, it's just like a scrap pile behind the back of Jack's house. It doesn't sound as big in scale, does it? But that's where it was, right? And then when searching about rummaging around, they were doing it for beer money, so I guess doing favours for Caleb, the father, earning money on this at the same time to spend on other stuff, I guess, for beer. It says, Kaden said when he was searching through on a pile, because he likes to look through stuff, he came across a bunch of golf clubs. Roughly 6 golf clubs, which could be the complete set, which were all at the party as well. 6 golf clubs, 6 people using them on Noah. You never know. But when Kaden found them, he reached out to Jack, who was nearby. And if you remember, not long ago, I did my analysis and questioned, what was Jack like when he heard about them being found? Did he know about them? Did he act surprised? Did he play dumb? Was he defensive? Well, Kaden said Jack's response was, throw it back in there. Oh, I'm sorry. I found a nice set of golf clubs and you're telling me just to chuck them back where they belong. Wider tone. Is it because Jack was hoping that Kaden wouldn't come across them? Or is it that Jack didn't know that they were there, but someone else took them there? And then when they were found, he was like, shit, who put them there? Makes you think. That was one of my theories at the time. Does it tie in with Renee Millan? Back at the party house Monday early morning, 6:30 a.m. We need to load up these guns. We need to pass them on to Caleb. Oh, but by the way, there's some golf clubs as well. Well, Caleb can have them as well. Caleb is the cart horse, donkey cart of the case. He takes hold of everything and all the items. So all the responsibilities passed on to him. They could be considered like that. Because what? He knows how to get rid of it? Well, not this time. If that was the case as to who had it and who passed it on. But for Jack to say, throw it back. No reference of, oh yeah, they look pretty cool, or, I wonder who would throw them away. What a waste of items. What a shame. No, it was put them back. It's like when you see it in the movies or films, you got a friend or a stranger walking around a house or building, picks up one item or finds a book, finds a note, and then suddenly a person comes in, slams it down and says, you're not supposed to see that. You know, something like that, or hands off, or put it back now. I don't want you touching it. It's a pair bloody golf club. It's not going to kill you. It's not got radiation on it. It's not a danger. It's safe to handle. But why is Jack wanting Kaden to put it down and forget about it almost? Oh, is it because Jack used one of them, or is aware that they were used on Noah? Seems like it. And with how it was described previously, with the shaping of some of the clubs and the injury sustained to Noah on the head, it kind of matches a similar description, a fish type shape, and there are some golf clubs which fit that description. Makes you think, doesn't it? And then the last thing that was mentioned by Kaden was the pole was bent. So like the pole of the club, the where you would hold on to when swinging. How high up, how low down, it wasn't explained, but they said it was bent. Now that's different to what Kaden said previously. Kaden said there was a dent. A dent is kind of different to a bent, in a way. But it depends where on the golf club as well. When it was originally described as the golf club had damage, it was dented. I was thinking the actual head of the golf club, what you would use to make contact with whatever. If you hit something hard, that could cause the head of it to break, to dent, to bend, whatever. And he said dent. But now Kaden is saying the actual pole bit, what you hold on to, was bent. So it took most of the force as it travelled through the head into the pole, and then that's what caused it to slightly break or bend. So something was hit at great force against a harder object from the looks of it. Was it whacked over someone's head? I mean, it's not the best comparison, but when I think of WWE, when I think of wrestling and someone's been hit over the head with a certain item, it's been bent, wrapped around them in a way. A certain pole whacked over someone's head, it just bends, folds on them. Can that happen with a golf club as well? Possibly. I guess it depends the quality, the make, the strength of it, but that's how it could be interpreted. And then once that happened, that was it of the conversation, the interview. music started playing, and then the interview ended. Did it actually end though? Because I'm sure with Justin Roy, they were saying, right, I think we'll leave it there for now. Thanks for watching. Goodbye. There was like a bit of a clear ending and an outro. But with Kaden, there wasn't a clear ending or outro. It seemed like they just cut it off like that. How long was the actual conversation? Maybe it was a full length 2 hours, but they decided to only show the first 1 hour, and then part 2 will include the other hour. I'd argue and say that was a good move by Partners in True Crime, because the longer the video, the harder it is to process it in one go, in one sitting. And it would have meant I would have had to have done a 2 to 4 hour long video if it was all in one go. I've only got so many sheets of paper. For every super chat or super thanks in this video will go towards more paper. I'll have an A3 sheet of paper next time, like a map, with all writing on if needed. I don't know how I will fit it on in front of me, but who knows. So there was an abrupt ending. There's clearly more to it. Did they announce part 2? I think they said part 1 on Facebook as a teaser message, but in terms of video itself, it didn't say coming soon, part 2, be on the lookout for it. I didn't see it worded like that unless other people did, but nevertheless, obviously there is more to come. But there's been a lot mentioned today. Will I need to keep hold of these notes to remember it? Probably. But what I hope is that on Facebook, these type of conversations come about online, so that when I do go back over it, I'll be somewhat informed already about it because I've seen it myself, but then I can also add on from those conversations on Facebook when people are talking about the 2 other service truck or semi-truck drivers. Who are they compared to the other 2 afterwards? And what about the time of when Kaden went to sleep compared to when he originally claimed to go to sleep, and when Renee Millan claimed to come on down, but now it's changed with what Kaden has said. You know, things like that, conversations. And of course, anybody watching this video right now, feel free to like and share it so more people see it. From my perspective, my analysis, the knowledge of what I've already heard and seen elsewhere, and even my analysis on the matter of Kaden being more inconsistent now based off what he stated previously on Facebook. There might be reasons for that, and there could be leniency in defense of Kaden, but what I see is inconsistencies and contradictions. And whilst yes, it's hard to do an interview, and that takes a lot of effort and emotion to do that in the first place, you got to give slack and be understanding towards Kaden. It's a hard thing to do, and mistakes can be made along the way. It's easier for somebody to talk who's not been there or impacted by the case, such as me. Yeah, I get all that, but if we're going to call out Stevie Howard, if we're going to call out Jack Newton, if we're going to call out maybe Jasmine, Millan and some others that were actually there, well, let's not do a witch hunt. If we're going to look at other people and criticise, or at least just make observations, we do the same with every other person. That's what I do. That's what other people can't do because of that emotional connection. Conflict of interest. It happened in the Dylan Rounds case. I might have questioned Candice Cooley, and so did many others. The moment I questioned Justin Rounds, people got triggered. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't do witch hunts like some of y'all do out there. I look at each person. I question each human. I question humans in real life. If someone was to slap me in the face with a fish, I would question that. Why did you do that? And question what will happen next. If I was at a zoo and I came across a gorilla, I might be almost as hairy as one on the legs, but I'll be questioning, does that gorilla know who I am? Does he trust me or she? Am I safe? I question. No harm in doing that. Just like how some people are skeptical. When there are trust issues as well in a case and things get turned upside down, you can't blame people for being a bit, cautious. And after this interview, I think it has turned everything upside down now. It's pushed things back, I guess, or pulled things forwards. Yeah, pulled things forwards by at least 1 hour. That does not help. It really does not help. But anyway, that's just for now. We'll see what happens next. And people are saying, well, maybe more questions will be answered next. Well, it depends what's talked about next, whether it's referring back to what we have questions for, if it's talking onwards with more news. Because it's with more news, that means even more questions on top of original questions. But maybe on Facebook at some point, Kaden may answer things. But I'm only reacting to what's currently present. Things can change. Hopefully people understood this analysis, this video. Apologies for how long it was. Of course it was long, but it just needed to be done. So thanks to those that did manage to watch. If you didn't fully, you can always catch up on the remaining part of the video another day when you've got time. And if you have joined late, you can always rewind back to the beginning so you understand everything and you understand the disclaimer behind this video. If you do want to catch up on recent videos, click on the I symbol top right corner of the screen. If you want to leave comments and additional responses, leave them down below. If you wonder why my eye contact was dodgy today, it's because there was more things to read on paper and more things which I've not seen before than what I'm used to hearing about. So I need to keep looking back to make sure I'm not slipping up or any slip of the tongues, okay? So the quality of this video, I don't know if it will be 1080 or 720. It might be lower quality because of the file size. I'll see how that goes. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Goodbye for now.